It was already raining for the second day. The sky was gray and dull, and the light drizzle was dreary. The wipers in John's car were running non-stop, and it annoyed him a little. There was a small traffic jam in Times Square, and while the cars were still moving, he decided to pull out his cell phone and see who had called him. There weren't many calls, one from his mom, one from a coworker, and 2 missed calls from Michael, a childhood friend he hadn't seen in a week. Ignoring the others, John dialed his friend's number. "Hey, what's up? Did something happen to you? Are you asking me? What's your problem? Where'd you get lost? You don't even call. You know what my situation is right now? I don't have any time." "No, that won't do. I know you're in trouble, but you need to rest. Besides, I think it would be good for you. By the way, I want you to meet my girlfriend. It's a shame you're coming alone. We're very worried and sympathetic to Sarah." Sarah. Yeah, that tragedy happened 6 months ago, and now John was feeling guilty. "I don't know. I'll come over if I can." "Where to?" "Come to our old place at the club and we'll sit and talk for a while, because I haven't seen you in a while." "Okay, if I can make it, I'll be there." Finally, the cars started. John turned off and thought. It was raining then, too. He and Sarah had gotten married and thought there would be no end to their happiness. He knew he had found the one and only person he would spend the rest of his life with. And he knew Sarah felt the same way because she loved him. But then tragedy struck, splitting their lives in half before and after. He was at fault for the accident. He lost control of the car. Only John didn't get a scratch, but Sarah was very badly hurt. After the doctors gave the verdict that she would never walk, Sarah told him not to suffer with her and sent her to her mother in the village, and he went on with his life. "Are you crazy? I can't live without you. You're my life, so I won't let you go anywhere. I'll do everything I can to make you well." He took her to their apartment, hired a nurse, and he went to work to buy medicine for his wife. And now 6 months had passed. John realized that he was tired. He no longer wanted to go home, to see the loving eyes of Sarah, who looked at him with adoration. He didn't understand what he wanted at all, but he knew for sure not the life he had now. But why did this happen to me? John thought. I'm still very young. I have everything ahead of me, and I'm like tied up sitting next to a disabled wife. I'm sick of everything. He slapped the steering wheel angrily, then remembered where he was and pulled himself together. I'm still going to see my friend, he said aloud to himself. I don't have to sit glued to my sick wife. Sarah lay on the bed and read a book. The daily exercises she had been doing with her nurse were slowly paying off. You just don't tell John anything yet. I don't want to mislead him yet. Let's just make sure we're not imagining this and that I'm actually feeling better. Okay, Sarah. Except I called the doctor, and Dr. Smith is coming over tomorrow. He's going to take a look at the results and give us further instructions. Thank you, Emily. I'm so grateful to you for practicing with me. My dear, you'll see you'll be fine. The important thing is to be patient. I know you're in terrible pain, but you have to be patient. And then, it's not that fast. You've already got you're making progress, not progress. So don't get too excited. You and I have a lot of work to do. Okay, Emily, whatever you say. I'll be patient. For John's sake, for my own sake, I'll do whatever it takes to get better. That's fine. Now I gotta go. I'll give you a little pillow lift and a book to read while your husband arrives. I've got a lot to do today. It's already evening. Do you need to rest? Sarah, I've got a lot of problems that no one can solve but me. So I'm gonna run. Didn't you say anything? Maybe there's something I can help you with. Emily was already near the door when she heard those words. She turned around and looked closely at this charming girl she'd been studying with for months. She was struck by her resilience, her vitality, her patience, and her love for everything around her. Thank you, Sarah, but I can manage on my own. She walked over to Sarah again, adjusted the pillows, and walked out the door. Sarah was left alone in the room. She looked at the clock again and sighed. John would be here soon. They would talk. She'll ask how he's doing at work. Sympathize because she knows exactly how hard it is for him. Her gaze fell on the photograph that stood on the nightstand next to the bed. It was their wedding day. They were so happy then, and it seemed to them that nothing could interfere with their happiness. John had been pursuing Sarah for a long time. and his friend Michael was in love with her too. But she chose John because she liked him for his ardor and some childish naivety. Michael, of course, immediately stepped aside when he realized that Sarah had chosen his best friend and did not interfere with them. She was worried about him because she treated him like a friend. But he answered her then that everything was fine, and that soon he too would find a decent girl and they would all get married and be family friends. But as soon as Sarah and John got married, Michael tried to stay out of Sarah's sight and only dated John. At first this hurt her a little, but then she realized that it was probably for the best for all of them. When she had her accident, Michael had rushed to the hospital too. He held her hand and cried. He said he would never have let that happen to her. It wasn't John's fault. It was raining and very slippery. The car skidded and we went into a ravine. But it's over. I'm alive, and I'm okay. Sarah, you don't understand. I don't care what the doctors say. I know you're going to be okay. I believe that. You should too. By the way, did you find a girlfriend? Michael didn't say anything back then, so she didn't insist. She was comfortable when he was around. But she loved John. The room was quiet as the minutes passed, and Sarah felt sleepy. She wanted to lie down, but the pillows were in the way, and she couldn't move them. John was still gone, and her mind was spinning with dark thoughts. But Sarah pushed them away and forced herself to think only good thoughts. The club was noisy. John squeezed through the crowd and finally saw a group of 4 people at a table. There was Michael, Danny, and 2 girls. Well, I finally found you. Why did you take a table so far away from the entrance? We wanted some privacy, Michael said, smiling, and gave John his hand to say hello. I'm glad you took the time to stop by. I know you don't have much time, but I just wanted to see you. How are you doing? How's Sarah? The same. The doctors don't say anything good, John said grimly. He sat down at the table and gestured to the waiter, glancing at Michael's companion. The girl was gorgeous. Of course, her black hair fell in beautiful waves to her shoulders, and her eyes were huge. And her lips made John's insides rise. He averted his gaze and looked at Michael, who was watching him intently. This is my girlfriend, Dinah. She and I have been dating for a month now. I've been calling you, but you haven't been picking up the phone lately. It's a lot of work. Yeah, you know, it's a 3-way street. But I can't take it anymore. I have to find something else. I'm working like an ox, and I'm getting paid nothing compared to what I'm making. Well, that said, you did buy yourself a nice car. My parents helped me. They realize I can't do my job without a car. And after that accident, my car was beyond repair. So they bought me a car. If we saw each other more often, you'd know that. How are you doing? I'm doing great. I'm expanding my business a little bit. Hey, John, why don't you come work for me? It's a lot of work, and you might have to work for 5 people, but you'll make twice as much as you did at your job. How about you? Do you want me to be your subordinate? I don't feel like it, but it's a tempting offer. I'll take it if you make me your deputy. Look how fast you are. No, John, I can't. I've got a trusted and reliable man in there, but we'll see how you do in the future. Maybe you'll get something for yourself. In the meantime, it's on my terms. I'm in. Can I think about it? John asked. Not for long. I already needed a man yesterday, so you have until tomorrow. Got it? John nodded, looking at Dinah again. She was looking at him too, just not with as much attention as he was. And he couldn't take his eyes off her. He liked her. Michael had always had great taste, always had beautiful girls around him. And he was the first to meet Sarah. He said he'd fallen in love and that it would last a lifetime. John fell in love when he saw her too. Now something was happening to him. He didn't want to go home, and he didn't want to see Sarah. John took a sip of the cocktail they brought him. Look, let's not wait till tomorrow. Since I'm here, I'll answer right away. I'll do it. I'll go in the morning to quit my job, and then I'll come see you. That's fine. I never doubted you. All right, I'll wait for you so I can bring you up to speed when you get here. They won't make you work for 2 weeks. Everyone laughed. John shook his head, looking at Dinah. No, I'll make sure they don't. All right, Michael, I've got to go. It was good to see you. Why don't you stay with us for a while? No, you should go. Sarah's probably worried about you. After Michael said that, John didn't want to go. She's fine. She's probably asleep by now. I'm just going to sit here for a while. I've forgotten what it's like. Home, work, no fun. You don't know, John. I'd give anything to have a home and a job like yours, Michael said thoughtfully. John stared at his friend for a moment, not sure what he meant. Don't mind me. I was just saying that. I guess it's time for me to get married too. Are you going to marry me, Uncle? Michael looked at Dinah. He saw her eyes light up at that. No, he laughed. I'm not ready to get married yet. I have other goals. And what are your goals, Bunny? Dinah said in a thin voice. To accumulate capital. And how many times have I told you not to call me that? Well, I'm going to freshen up a bit. John got up after Michael, and they went out together. Where did you find such a lady? John couldn't take it anymore. She's a goddess. And your wife is a goddess. And this is just a cheap knockoff. You know, it's a pity it's not written on women what they are. You'd waste so much time figuring it out. Thankfully, there are so many of these girls, so you don't even have to deal with them. They're so easy to understand. Dinah's the same. All she has on her mind is clothes and nothing else. But she's so pretty. You're wrong. You can forgive a lot of things in a woman like that. I suppose you know better, but I can't stay with them long. I get bored with them quickly. They went out together and sat down at the table again. Danny was gone. He must have gone somewhere. John didn't know him very well. Sometimes he saw him with Michael, but he wasn't close to him. Where's Danny? He asked Michael. He shrugged and sat down next to Dinah. Did he say where he went? Danny got a phone call. He grabbed the phone and went out. I don't know anything else, Dinah said, pouting her lips and snuggling up to Michael. John felt uncomfortable. He really liked Dinah, and he wished he could be in Michael's place. But alas, seeing that he had better go home, John did get up, said goodbye, and went out for a breath of cold air. He noticed that the rain had finally stopped. He got in his car and drove home. Dinah's face was in front of his eyes the whole time. It was like an obsession. Indecent scenes flashed through his mind. He was a man after all, and with a sick wife, things were not right. He was just doing his marital duty, but he wasn't enjoying it. Sarah would comfort him, saying that she was having a great time, but he could see that she was in pain. After that, he tried to approach her with it as little as possible, but only if he couldn't bear it at all. He parked the car, got out, and looked up at the windows of the apartment where they lived. Sarah was still awake. The light was on in her room. Sighing, he headed home. Opening the door, he immediately heard Sarah's voice. John. Yeah, it's me. What are you doing up? It's late. I was expecting you. I thought you'd be here as usual. And Emily left early today. She had some problems. I couldn't lie down properly. Everything hurts. Why don't you help me move the pillows? Sure, I'll just wash my hands. He washed his hands and wondered how much longer this was going to go on. He didn't have the strength anymore. He didn't want to go to Sarah's either. He was tired of looking at her suffering, and at the same time at that brave look of hers, and reading in her eyes that everything was fine. Nothing's good, it's never been good, and it never will be. And he doesn't want to live like that anymore. Perhaps he should send her to her mother, but it's not possible, and it's inconvenient. She wanted to take her daughter with her, but he wouldn't let her. And after what happened, Sarah's mother's health has become very bad, and most likely she won't be able to take care of her. So he'll have to look after her himself. But he couldn't do that for much longer. His patience was running out. Walking into Sarah's room, he removed the pillows and helped her lie down. She breathed a sigh of relief, writhing in pain. He turned away. This was something he couldn't look at anymore. Do you need any pills to take? Give me some painkillers because my back is really hurting. Okay. He poured water into a glass, took a couple of pills, and helped her drink them. I'm tired today and I have a lot of work to do, so I'm going to go to bed now. Good night. Honey, I'm sorry. I know you're working so hard because of me. But I know we're going to be okay. You'll be patient, I promise you. John didn't say anything. He silently turned off the light and closed the door behind him. Sarah lay in the dark, thinking about her husband. He hadn't even kissed her when he came home from work. Poor little guy. Must be tired a lot. Besides, he's coming back later and later every day, and he probably doesn't have enough time to rest, she thought. But that was okay. The doctor would come tomorrow and tell her what she needed to do next, because she wasn't going to give up. She had been told then that the chances were slim, but even that was enough for her. It's not much, but it's there. And a nurse. She was lucky. Emily was a doctor, a specialist. True, she no longer worked in the hospital, but as a nurse. She took a lot of money, of course, but it was worth it. She knew her job very well. She didn't like to talk about herself. Sarah tried to ask her about her family, whether she had children, but she didn't say anything and quickly turned the conversation to another topic. Sarah realized that most likely the person did not want to tell and did not ask again. They were both very fond of reading, though. Emily would bring her her own books and borrow from Sarah's library. After she and John had lived together, they had brought her books from home, which her father had still collected. John still laughed at her. Then why does she need so much waste paper? Because he himself did not like to read and had no interest in books. The fact that a book is just fine. It relaxes you. I sometimes, when I start reading, even forget where I am. And diving into an adventure, or investigating a murder, or worrying about a heroine who is heartbroken. Found something to worry about. John laughed at the bottom then. We have enough problems in our lives and you worry about fictional characters. Sarah tried to explain to him that it was all different for her, but John didn't want to listen to her because he didn't understand her interest. She stopped telling him about it then and only read it when he wasn't home or in her spare time. When John watched soccer on TV, she lamented that she had very little time to read now. Family life demanded a different attitude, after all. But now she had plenty of time and could read every day. But when she started doing special exercises with Emily, she didn't have enough energy for books. But that didn't bother her, because she was eager to get some results. She could see that John was getting tired, that he was losing hope, and that she would have to prove to him that they would be fine, that they would be happy. She just needed to be patient, and they would overcome this misfortune together. After the club, Michael and Dinah arrived at his house. She went to the bathroom and he lay down on the couch and picked up his phone. He opened a folder of photos and leafed through, a few stopping on one. It showed a smiling Sarah, the one he still loved and had no way of forgetting. After she'd chosen John, he'd gone into the shadows, hadn't gotten in the way of their happiness. Then, when it happened to her, he wanted to tear his friend apart. But again, Sarah wouldn't let him, and he'd bitch and not say anything to him, realizing that it was very hard on him too. Michael looked at Sarah's face and thought about the fact that he would do anything for her, just to have her by his side. He was seeing less of John, and he didn't go to their house only because he felt so bad after seeing Sarah that he wanted to cry wolf. But John was his friend, and seeing how hard he was working for his wife, he decided to help him, even though he didn't need an employee. But what wouldn't you do for an old friend? He didn't like the way John was looking at Dinah today, though. He wasn't jealous, just uncomfortable with the fact that John had a beautiful woman waiting for him at home, and he was looking at other women and casting carnivorous glances at her. Dinah came out of the bathroom and sat down next to Michael. Michael turned off his cell phone and mumbled, "No, it's none of your business." "Michael, I don't like it when you talk to me like that," Dinah objected. "Why is it none of my business? I'm your girlfriend, and I don't like it when you look at other women." "Dinah, you're not my girlfriend. We're just having a good time together. If you meet another guy, I won't mind. You can go out with him. I understand you want to get married, but I'm sorry, it's not for me." "Do you love that girl in the picture?" "Yes, I love her very much." "Then why are you with me and not her? Don't you think there are too many questions on a subject that doesn't concern you at all?" Dinah remained silent. She looked carefully at Michael, who had gone to the window and was staring out into the darkness. "I get it. She chose the other guy. And you still can't get over it?" "Because she's mine. She's my destiny. She didn't realize it then, but I did. But you can't force your way out. So I backed off, but now I feel like I'm going to get what I want. And we're going to be together." "You're just crazy. You got to move on. Get married, have kids. You're living in the past and you're torturing not only yourself, but the people around you." Michael turned and approached Dinah. "You're not as stupid as I thought at first," he said. Dina recoiled, startled by his hard and cold gaze. "Don't worry, I never hurt a woman, but I'm going to need your help, and I'll pay you well for it. Will you help me? You've decided to get your hands on that girl after all, haven't you? She's not a thing, for one. And secondly, I already said it's none of your business. I'm just asking if you're willing to help me. I want a simple yes or no answer from you." "Yes, I am ready to help you," Dina replied. "But only on condition that you do exactly as I say. And if you tell anyone about our conversation, I'll punish you. You know me so well, I'm very good at that." "Dina, I told you I'd help you. Tell me what I have to do." Michael looked at Dina carefully again, sat down next to her and began to tell her. John had quit his job without any trouble. And he was a little hurt that he hadn't been persuaded to stay. He'd been fired without any problems. He walked out of the office holding a box of his belongings. He quickly loaded everything into the trunk and drove home. He wanted to leave it all behind, not carry it with him. Oh, and then he needed to change before he met with Michael. He'd seen what his friend looked like yesterday. He looked like he'd just stepped off the cover of a magazine. John had always envied him because Michael was a good-looking guy, unlike himself. And he was surprised when Sarah chose him over Michael. It flattered him, and at the time he was just happy with the way things had turned out. But now he was ready to trade with anyone, as long as he didn't have to live this life with his sick wife. As he entered the apartment, he heard voices. Surprised, John looked into his wife's room and saw a nurse and a doctor. Was something wrong? "No, dear, just a routine checkup. Everything's fine." "All right then." John left the room and made his way to the bathroom to wash his face. "You'll have to forgive him. He didn't even say hello to anyone," the nurse said to the doctor. "It's just that he works a lot, and he's very tired. I'm surprised he came so early. Something must have happened." "Don't worry, Sarah, I know it's hard on all of you. But I think you're making progress," Emily said. "That's right, Emily, we are making some progress, but it's too early to tell. Keep doing the same exercises. And then I've prescribed some medications for you. You should already be taking them. Make sure you tell your husband to get them for you." "Okay, I'll be sure to tell him." "You probably shouldn't ask him to do that," Emily said, and picked up the prescription. "I'll ask him for the money and go to the pharmacy myself." "Thank you." "Well, now that we've decided I can go," said the doctor. "I'll come back in a week and see how things are going." Emily went to see the doctor off. And Sarah smiled. Finally, some results. Too bad she couldn't say anything to John yet. But it wouldn't take much longer to make him happy. A little later, John came in to see her. He poked his wife in the forehead and then said, "Emily went to get her medicine. I really don't understand why they're putting you on all this stuff, because it's obvious it's not doing any good." "Don't say that, John. You'll see. I'll be fine. It's all about believing." "Believe in what? That you'll get up and run? It's not going to happen. The doctors made it very clear to us that you won't walk, you won't even be able to stand up. So why get your hopes up?" Sarah was silent. Tears came to her eyes, but she pulled herself together, smiled and asked, "Why are you up so early today? Nothing happened? And you probably want me not to come home at all. Do you want me to work day and night so that you buy yourself unnecessary drugs?" "John, why are you mad at me?" "I was just asking. Besides, I'm worried about what's wrong with you." "I told you I'm fine. Besides, even if something is wrong, is there anything you can do to help me?" Sarah didn't say anything. She didn't know what to say. John had been kind of cold lately as it was, but today he wasn't like himself. "Well, don't be mad at me. I'm just worried. In fact, I'm glad you're back so early." "I wish. I don't care what you'd like, and I have to go to work to support you. And your medication, if you must know, costs a lot of money." He walked out, slamming the door. One tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. She wiped it away and told herself that she wouldn't cry, that everything would work out. Everyone's just nervous. It's hard for everyone right now, but they'll be fine soon. Just a little more and things will get better. John drove to Michael's house and thought about the fact that he was wrong to yell at Sarah. His nerves were just getting the best of him. He didn't mean it, but for some reason he couldn't help himself. The words just kept coming out. It was especially infuriating when that nurse came up to him shoved a prescription up his nose, and told him the amount. And it wasn't a small amount, by the way. You got to earn that money. I had to give it to him. But of course his mood was ruined, because he expected to buy himself a new shirt. But it didn't work out. He had to change into his old suit. For some reason, he didn't want to go to work with a coworker in jeans and a sweater. So he took it out on Sarah. And for some reason, he didn't want to tell her that he was going to work with Michael now. He didn't know why he hadn't told her. But he didn't like the way Sarah talked about Michael, always with a kind of warmth in her voice. He'd been jealous before, but now he was just angry. That's how I see a tyrant. I was actually counting on you to come tomorrow, Michael greeted him with those words. Dear John, I'm glad you're here today. My deputy Victor will show and tell you everything. I think you will quickly understand the meaning of your work and get involved in the process. We have a lot of orders. I thought you were going to bring me up to speed, John said. No, I'm sorry, but I don't have any time. I've got 3 meetings scheduled today and I've got a lot of work to do. But don't worry, I think I'll be free by evening and we'll go to a restaurant and have dinner. Celebrate your new job. You okay with that? I understand you're not in much of a hurry to get home. Not really, John sighed and looked at Michael. Besides, Sarah's not alone. She has a nurse with her all the time, so it's all right. Well, you know best. Okay, I'm going to go, but you better get up to speed. Time is money. John looked at Michael with envy. He'd always wanted to be like him, as determined, serious, smart. But he'd never been able to do it. Maybe now that he would be working with him, he could learn from him. The day passed very quickly. John realized it only when he looked out the window. It was already dark. He looked at his watch and thought that Michael probably wouldn't make it to dinner. He sighed and started to get ready to go home. But then a cheerful Michael entered the office. I thought you were on your way home, but I see that you're here, and I'm glad that we'll have dinner together. It's been a while since we've talked. I've had a lot on my mind. Come on, let's go. I'm starving. I thought it wouldn't work out. I'm on my way home, John said. Well, if you must, Sarah must be worried and miss her husband. You're at work all day. She has a nurse, plus she needs her rest. So I can go and have dinner in peace. Well, whatever you say. But if I were you, I'd what? Nothing. Okay, let's go. They got into their cars and drove toward the restaurant. But John didn't know where they were going yet. Then, when they stopped at the luxurious building and got out of the cars, Michael explained that it was a new restaurant, and he had been here a couple of times before. The food here is amazing. I think you're going to love it. Michael, I'm sorry, but I don't think I have enough money. I can only imagine how much this place costs. Don't worry, I invited you, I'm paying for it. By the way, are you really short on cash? Yeah, I gave what I had left today to my wife for her medicine. You have no idea how much they cost. Plus, I feel like they're all useless. Is there anything else Sarah's hoping for? I realized a long time ago that it wasn't going to work. The doctor said it was a long shot, but it's still a long shot. But what do you think, Sarah? No, there's no chance. She's like a vegetable. She can barely move. And the doctor just said that so she wouldn't be upset. I don't understand why they're prescribing her these drugs. They're not helping. Well, the doctors know best. In fact, I don't think you want your wife to get back on her feet. Why don't you go out there and support her? I mean, miracles do happen. They only happen in fairy tales. But in real life, take my word for it, they don't. But Sarah's a fighter. I know her well. She'll do anything to get back up, and she needs your support more than ever, Michael argued. And I don't want to get her hopes up, because that's not going to do any good. Have you looked into it? Maybe there are clinics abroad where she can get back on her feet? Just because it's not affordable for us, and they won't cure her there. I know that for a fact, John said. Michael shook his head, but said nothing more. The waiter came to them just at that moment, and they began to order. When the food was brought and they had eaten a little more, they began to talk again. John was the first to ask a question. Why are you dining alone tonight, without Dinah? She's a friend of mine. She and I have an open relationship. She knows it very well, and has nothing against it. Are you serious? I wouldn't let a woman like that get away from me. You have a beautiful wife at home. Why do you have to go out with her, buddy? Michael, I don't think you understand. After that accident, I'm pretty much without a wife. I got an invalid living at home, that's all. I'm a man. I want to move on with my life, not sit around and comfort her. Michael wanted to remind her whose fault it was that all this had happened, but he didn't say anything because he didn't think it was the right time to tell him. Maybe things weren't so bad for them, and he would meddle in the family, bring discord. Apparently, John was just tired, so he said those words. So Michael decided to steer the conversation in another direction. How did you understand all that today? Do you know what you're going to do now? Do you have any questions? No, I got it all figured out. Hey, how'd you get so big so fast? I mean, I thought it was going to take years. I worked hard. And I explained to you that I had a plan, and if I stuck to it, it would work out. And it did. And me, you know, Michael, I was good at first too. But you remember how happy we were. And then the accident, and everything went to hell. There's nothing you can do about it. I feel like I'm in prison. I don't want to go home. I don't want to do anything. I'm tired. I guess I want to run away somewhere far away so that no one will ever find me. But I have to live and hope for something. But I don't hope for anything anymore. I've been meaning to ask you something. Do you know if there are any special hospitals where they can put disabled people like my wife? What are you talking about, John? Do you hear yourself? You don't understand me. It's just a question. I think maybe she'd be better off there. I mean, she's alone most of the day. I can't be with her because I have to work, and she's waiting for me, worrying all the time. I'm always in a hurry, and life just passes me by, and we're so young. I'm tired, Michael. I just can't take it anymore. You'll earn more money, find a good clinic, send your wife there for treatment, and they'll put her back on her feet. Do you realize how much money that is? And if they don't, I've just thrown it away. Are you talking about your wife? So what if it's a waste? You'll know you did everything you could to help her. If I were you. Michael stopped talking at that point again. It's just something you've never dealt with. I have, and I know that it's only in the movies that people with this diagnosis get back on their feet. It's not like that in real life. She's just going to lay there for the rest of her life. And when I think about it, I don't want to live. Because it's a misery, not a life. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're talking about you or Sarah. I'm talking about me. Because I don't even have a wife. I don't even know who she is. I've got to get on with my life. And Michael didn't know what to say to that. John was not the same guy he'd thought he was then, kind, helpful. Or had he never been? Yeah, you surprised me. But that's your opinion. And I know it's hard for you, but you don't think about the fact that Sarah's having a harder time than you are. What does that have to do with me? I'm not lying in bed like a vegetable. My body's fine, and I'm not going to bury myself with her. John, okay, we'll figure something out. It'll be easier for you to work now. You won't have to work so much, and you'll make more money. You're probably just tired. That's what's gotten into you. It got to me a long time ago when I realized nothing was going to change. But you're not doing anything to make it change, Michael said. What would you do if you were me? Trust me, the same nothing. You're wrong, John. I'm willing to fight to the end for the woman I love. And if there's one chance in 1,000 that she could get better, I'd take it. You're a grown man and you don't realize there's no chance at all. She'll never get up again. She's just holding on now because it's been a while. And then she'll realize it's useless. And that's what I'm most afraid of. I don't even want to think about what's going to happen next. Well, it's time to go home. Your wife's waiting for you at home. And as long as she's holding on, like you say, you should be there for her. I don't want to be. I can't see her anymore. You should see her. She looks the same as before. And yet I can't see her anymore. Michael was in a lot of pain. He did not expect to hear a revelation from his closest friend, and, as it turned out, a weak man who was ready to leave his wife just because he was tired. And he tried not to think about Sarah, realizing what she was going through. How does she feel when she sees her husband who doesn't support her and doesn't want her? He gritted his teeth, wanting so badly to shake John and tell him he didn't want to see him, to go to their house, to grab Sarah and hold her against him, and whisper in her ear that he would get her out, that he would help her, that he would help her, that he would do anything to make her happy. But she had fallen in love with someone else. And no matter what he did, she would still consider him her friend, but unloved. After saying goodbye, they drove off in different directions. Michael drove home, realizing that Sarah needed help, that with a husband like John, she would simply die. And what should he do? He could only wait for his beloved to realize that John was not her destiny, that she was a little mistaken when she chose him. Apparently she was scared. He realized that, but he didn't interfere, seeing that if he interfered, he would lose Sarah as a friend. He felt guilty because he hadn't come to visit her lately. He couldn't. He knew that if he saw her, he wouldn't be able to leave, wouldn't be able to get away from her, because his heart already ached for her. And knowing how the man she loved felt about her, he couldn't leave her with John. John also drove leisurely through the city, listening to music with pleasure. He had a delicious dinner, and everything would have been fine if he didn't have to drive home. That dampened his mood a bit, and he decided to drive around town a bit to wait for his wife to finally fall asleep. Once again, Sarah didn't wait for her husband. She fell asleep after taking a painkiller, and this time a sleeping pill as well. She had overdone it today. Emily scolded her for it, because it was absolutely wrong to do that. Sarah realized that herself, but she couldn't stop because she felt like she could do more exercise, when she didn't need to. By evening she was aching so badly that she lay quietly and moaned. But it was the nurse who heard her. "Sarah, I warned you that you should listen to me and not do anything amateurish. But now that you haven't listened to me, we need to let you rest for a few days. Otherwise, this will not be good for you, but bad for you. Do you understand me? I'm sorry, I really overdid it today. I felt like I could. And this is the result. Forgive me again, you're not angry. I'm just so excited to tell my husband about my progress. I can see how hard it is for him. He's losing hope, and that's the worst part. I need to tell him. But I can't yet. He won't understand. It won't mean anything to him." "You're wrong, Sarah. A man in love sees everything, even the smallest things, and I think he'll be happy for you. Besides, he'll tell you to take care of yourself." "No, John won't. I need to work out more before he realizes I can finally get back on my feet." John had been working on Michael's farm for a week now. His friend was right. There wasn't a lot of work, but when he saw how much he was going to get, he was pleasantly surprised. That afternoon, arriving at work at 8 o'clock, John went into his office, turned on his computer, and delved into his calculations. The day stretched slowly, and he looked at his watch and decided to go to lunch. Besides, he hadn't even had coffee since this morning because Sarah was still asleep and he didn't want her to see him when she woke up. Lately, he had been trying to have as little contact with her as possible. More often than not, he came home when she was already asleep, and he was fine with that. He was just getting up from the table when the door opened and Dinah appeared on the doorstep. "Hi, do you know where Michael is?" "No, I haven't seen him today." "Why, did something happen to you?" "Yes, I have. I want to tell him we're breaking up. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't care. I was never anything to him. He's just been seeing me to kill time. I don't like that. I want a serious relationship." "Are you right? That's not going to work. Listen, I'm going out to lunch right now. Would you care to join me?" "No, I'm not hungry. I could use a drink right now." "Let's go to a restaurant. Have a drink. I don't have any more work to do today. I'll do it tomorrow. It's just that I can see that you're in a bad way, and I can keep you company so you're not alone." Dinah looked at John carefully, then said, "All right, let's go. Only you probably won't be able to sing. They say you've got a wife at home. You're lucky you've got someone waiting for you. I'm always alone. I thought I could do something with Michael. But I was wrong. He doesn't feel anything for me. He's a good man, though. He never hid it. He always told me the truth. Well, if you offer and you're not afraid of a scandal waiting for you at home, then let's go." "I'm not afraid of anything, and there won't be a scandal. My wife is sick and terminally ill." "I see. And I thought I had a chance, because frankly my wife is not an obstacle for me. But if she's sick, I won't even flirt with you." After saying that, John felt uncomfortable. He wanted her to flirt with him, he wanted to hug her, and in general he wanted a lot of things. But he pulled himself together, and they left the office together. In the restaurant they ordered 300 grams of cognac and, having drunk a couple of shots, began to talk. Look, I'm a beautiful girl, but I have no luck in my personal life. I'm dating a guy. He says he loves me, and then he marries someone else. Tell me what's wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. It's them assholes who don't get it. And Michael's just like them. No, don't touch Michael, said Dinah. He and I are fair. He told me at once that he had no love for me, and that I shouldn't count on anything. I just hoped I could melt his heart, but I couldn't. And he did a good job of not lying to me. Plus, he's very generous. Although he treated me like that, but still, he did not forget to do me nice things, as well as expensive gifts. I know this is all wrong. You'll say he was just paying me, but I'm grateful for a lot of things. And I have no hard feelings toward him. It's interesting, Michael's always been like that. I guess we became friends because we're so much alike. I value his friendship and I cherish it. And I'm in a difficult situation right now, and he's been there for me. I'm very grateful to him for that. You're right, Michael is like that. He's always there for me, and he's always there for me. What happened with your wife? Why, didn't Michael tell you anything? Actually, John did not want to tell about his wife, but apparently the cognac was doing its job, and he could not stop. No, he never said anything about his friends or his work. When I met him, he just relaxed and avoided such topics. I see. Yes, my wife is paralyzed and there is no chance she will ever get up. We realized that a long time ago and decided she was on her own. I'm on my own. She doesn't want to ruin my life, realizing that I'm young and that I still have a long way to go. And she, as a wife, will not be able to give me much. So I'll probably divorce her. She's an interesting woman. And to be honest, in such situations, women behave differently, trying to keep her husband, realizing that then she will be all alone. How did this happen? Why was she in that situation? She was driving, she lost control. And now she's bedridden for life. This is why I don't like driving. And Michael offered to buy me a car, but I turned him down. I'd rather take a cab, but I can't drive myself. I'm too scared. I know it's really hard for you right now. Especially when you see the woman you love so helpless. You want to do something to help her, but you don't know how. I've done everything I can, but it's no use. I worked like an ox, taking her to different hospitals. When I realized there was nothing I could do, I thought I'd go crazy. But then we got over it. Both of us have. I see. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But the important thing is to keep your spirits up. Life is beautiful. It just sends us trials that we have to go through. Dinah, tell me more about yourself. I'd love to hear from you. There's nothing to tell. I got a job after college. Everything seemed fine until the boss started harassing me. I had to quit. Now I'm a freelancer. I've got some savings, and Michael's helping me out. But I realize I need to do something else. But I haven't decided what yet. I actually want to get married. Go out, wait for my husband from work. Cook him delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and then give him a passionate night. What's so supernatural about my dreams? But I don't even have that. I didn't think a girl like you was like that. What kind of girl? You think if I look like a doll, I don't have a soul? Well, I have the simplest of desires and nothing special about them. John was happy with Dinah, and he could see that she was happy with him. And he longed to have her with him always, not just for one night, but always. But what to do? What could he do to keep them together? All sorts of thoughts popped into his head. But how to make it right for him, he didn't know yet. The next day, Michael called him into his office. Did something happen to you? You weren't in the office at 12 last night. Something with Sarah? What does Sarah have to do with anything? Michael, come on. She's fine. And in her case, nothing's going to change. This is different. I was at a restaurant with Dinah last night. Your girlfriend is hot. I can't take my eyes off her. I must be out of my mind. But you gotta understand, I can't live with a log anymore. I have neither strength nor patience. Michael listened intently to John. And the more he listened, the more he didn't like the situation. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Live, I guess. Okay, I have a headache today. I think I'm gonna go home, if that's okay with you. I'm probably just tired. I haven't had a vacation in a long time. So let me take a little vacation today. You're going home? Where else would I go? Okay, go ahead. Just don't do anything stupid. I don't like the look on your face. It's the look people get when they want to commit a crime. John had gone pale. He hadn't made up his mind yet, and Michael had already read it on his face. He had to be very careful so that no one would suspect anything. He had a plan already in place. In fact, no one sees his wife except Emily. But he'd fire her today, say he'd found a nurse more experienced than her. No, that's not going to work. She could just come in to visit, because she and Sarah have become very close lately. So it's got to be something else. He'll say he wants to take her to her mom's, that he's having financial difficulties for now and can't pay. Right? That's what he'll do. And then? Well, what then, he didn't want to think about yet. When he went outside, he saw that it was finally snowing. The first snowflakes were quietly falling on the ground, and soon they would cover the whole earth with their white fluffy blanket. John drove home, convincing himself that whatever he did now would be the right thing to do. He should take Sarah far away and leave her there. Better in the woods, but it was a long drive there. All right then, he can see where to dump her on the way. But then what do we tell anyone who asks about her? That mom has it now? He'll think of something. The main thing now was just to get rid of her. He couldn't bear to see her in his house every day. He'll think of something. He just has to make sure she's never found. Like they say, no body, no case. When he's finally going to enjoy himself and make her feel good about herself. You can't live like this. It's not just her suffering, it's the suffering of those around her. John noticed his hands trembling as he drove up to the house, but he decided that he wouldn't pay attention to such trifles. And if he didn't do what he had planned today, he just wouldn't have the guts to do it later. And then he wouldn't do it ever again. When he got home, he immediately made his way to his wife's room. Sarah was breathing very frequently. There was a blush on her cheeks, as if she had been running cross-country. "What's going on here?" he asked angrily and looked at Emily, who was pouring water into a glass for Sarah. "It's just calisthenics, and we've been practicing for a while," Emily said and handed the glass to Sarah. She began to drink, looking at John with shining eyes. He looked away and said, "Emily, I need to talk to you." They walked out and he got right down to business. He held out an envelope to Emily with the words, "As of today, you no longer work here." "But why? Are you having trouble with money right now?" Emily wondered. "That's why I won't be able to pay you for the time being. I'm asking you to find somewhere else." "What about Sarah? Who will look after her now?" "Sarah will move in with her mother. It's a necessary and hopefully temporary measure. As soon as things get better, I'll bring her back. And if you have any problems with your job by then, which I doubt because you're a good professional, you'll be able to work for us again." "Where does her mom live?" "Maybe I could visit Sarah." "I don't think so. Her mom lives in the middle of nowhere. It's a long drive. But don't worry. There are plenty of women out there who'd be happy to look after her. I'll find someone to take good care of her. Besides, her mother doesn't work, so she'll be with her daughter all the time." Emily nodded, took the envelope, and began to pack. "I'd like to say goodbye to Sarah." "Is that okay?" "No, Sarah will be upset. I haven't told her about our temporary difficulties yet. I'll tell her it won't be for long, then she won't be so upset. And if you start saying goodbye, it'll just make it worse." "You're probably right." "All right, well, I'll be on my way. Tell Sarah you don't have to tell her anything. When you bring her back again, please call me right away, please." "I will." When Emily left, John stood in the hallway for a moment, then took a deep breath and went into his wife's room. Sarah was already breathing evenly, but it was obvious she was a little tired. "I heard the door slam. Was that Emily leaving?" Sarah asked. "Yes, I let her go. Let her get some rest. She needs rest too. In fact, I have a surprise for you. I took a vacation and I want to go with you to see your mother." "You want to see your mother?" "You ask me, John. How are we going to get there?" "We'll go in my car. I'll put you gently in the back seat, make a soft bed, and you'll be comfortable. Besides, it's been so long since you've been outside. I guess you'd like to see what's going on out there." "You bet I do." Emily said, "It's snowing. And you know how much I love looking at snow. I'm in." When do we leave? I need to get some sleep, I'm tired. Then we'll pack up and get on the road right away. But John, isn't it too late? It's dangerous to ride at night in this weather. It'll be dark in a little while. That's all right. I'll be very careful. Besides, you should get some sleep too. I can already see your eyes closing. Get some rest. And then when I get everything ready, we'll get on the road right away. Emily walked out of the house, walked a little way, and sat down on a bench. Somehow she couldn't believe that John had decided to take his wife to her mother. He hadn't really cared about Sarah lately. Emily could see that she was worried, but she didn't show it. Besides, Sarah had told him that her mother was very sick now, and her neighbor was always with her. Something wasn't right. Without thinking, Emily picked up the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart, and that wasn't in her phone book. She was answered immediately. She said a couple of sentences, looked at her watch, and indicated that she would be right over. Then she got up and walked to the bus stop. She felt uneasy, but she thought she had done the right thing by calling this man. He would definitely figure it all out and wouldn't let Sarah get hurt. Sarah opened her eyes. The room was dark, the clock ticking quietly, lulling her to sleep again. She couldn't figure out what time it was or where John was. The house was quiet, and she thought that her husband was probably still sound asleep. He must be tired. Well, let him sleep. They would go tomorrow then. It's no big deal. At least he would be rested and in a good mood that she would soon meet her mother. Sarah's mood lifted. She closed her eyes and began to think how happy her mom would be when she saw her. Sarah missed her very much, but she didn't say anything to her husband. She realized that it was hard enough for him. Listening, Sarah heard someone walking around the apartment. The footsteps were inaudible and quiet, as if the person didn't want to be heard. "John, is that you?" "John, why are you yelling?" "Of course it's me. I just thought you were still asleep and I didn't want to wake you. I packed a few things, made us some sandwiches for the road. And since you're already awake, I'll get you dressed and take you out to the car." Sarah nodded. The fear was gone, and she looked at John with eyes full of love. Now her husband was in a good mood, and on the road, when they drove, she would tell him that she was making progress, and that if she kept it up, she would soon be able to sit up on her own. And then she would stand up. She knew that would make John happy, give him hope again, and they would be fine. As he turned on the light in the room, Sarah glanced at the clock and looked at her husband in surprise. It was almost 2 now. "John, I don't think we should go at this time. Let's wait until morning." "No, we're not waiting for morning. Besides, I'm well rested and I can drive. And there's no traffic. We can get out of the city without any problems." Sarah didn't know what to say. Well, if that's the way he wants it, we can go. As he dressed his wife, she noticed that his hands were shaking. She looked at him and wanted to ask him how he was feeling. But the words stuck in her throat. She realized something was wrong. Thoughts began to jumble in her head. She didn't understand what was going on. John was silently doing his job and didn't even look at his wife. Then he took her in his arms and carried her to the car. He put her gently on the blanket, slammed the door, and went somewhere, apparently to see if they'd gotten everything, because he was gone for a couple minutes. Sarah lay in the car, not realizing what was going on. She had a feeling they weren't going to her mother's house because the bags were nowhere to be found, though maybe he had already carried them to the car. Perhaps she calmed down a little and heard John coming. He got behind the wheel and they started up. "John, could you get me some water? I'm really thirsty." "Sarah, just bear with me. I don't want to stop now. I'll get you some water later." She said nothing to this and decided to talk to her husband a little, to cheer him up. But it didn't work. He didn't answer her questions and tried not to pay any attention to Sarah at all. They had been traveling for about an hour when Sarah felt tired and fell asleep. She woke up to the banging of the door. When she opened her eyes, she saw that her husband was gone. Apparently, he had decided to go out to stretch a little. It was hard to drive for so long after all. But the door swung open on her side. John grabbed Sarah and pulled her out of the car. She stared at him, uncomprehending, and he laid her down on the bare ground. Then he took a blanket out of the car, threw it to her, and without saying anything, got in, turned the car around, and drove off. Sarah stared after the car and couldn't believe what was happening to her. She wanted to scream but couldn't. She wanted to pull herself up, but she couldn't either. Besides, it was very cold to lie in the snow, and she realized that she would soon freeze. As if in a fog, she saw that she was in a dump. Piles of garbage were towering on all sides. Clearly, no one would find her here, and they probably wouldn't be looking for her. After all, he'd probably told everyone he was taking her to her mother. And there's no way to contact her mother. Because in the middle of nowhere, where her mother lives, they don't know what cell phones are, no matter how many times they tried to get the internet there. But it didn't work out. A tear rolled down her cheek, and Sarah raised her eyes to the sky. She prayed. Then she looked around again, and it was clear to her that she was probably going to stay here. It was a shame her life had ended like this. She wanted to live. She wanted so much to love, to have children, to have a big and friendly family. And now she's going to have none of that. Her husband had just thrown her away like a piece of junk that was being thrown into a landfill. She felt helpless and needed by no one. For some reason, Sarah remembered the time when the three of them had been friends, Dinah, Michael, and John. She remembered the moment when Michael had realized that she favored John. He had told her he wouldn't get in the way. But Sarah had to be careful because John was capable of betrayal. At the time, Sarah had thought that Michael had said that out of spite because she hadn't chosen him. But now, remembering those words, she realized that Michael had told her the truth. I guess he'd already seen what John was capable of. But now, what's the point? She'd been thrown out, which meant there was nothing left to live for. She began to freeze, her teeth chattering from the cold, and she stiffened, pulling the blanket with her hands to keep warm. It didn't help much. But as it seemed to her, she began to warm up little by little. She felt sleepy, though, and closed her eyes tiredly. She dreamed that she was walking through a meadow and was picking flowers to put in a vase. And ahead of her, she saw a male figure coming toward her. But no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't recognize who it was. Because it was a man she didn't recognize. And then she heard that he was calling her, and he kept shouting her name, Sarah. Sarah, and she wanted to yell back, but she couldn't. She wanted to answer again. Then she opened her eyes and realized that she must have dozed off and was dreaming. But as she listened, she really heard her name, Sarah. Sarah, I'm here, she shouted. But there was no scream, only a hoarse whisper, and she realized she couldn't even call for help anymore. She closed her eyes as she suddenly felt herself being grabbed in her arms and heard Emily's voice nearby. Well, thank God we made it. I was so afraid we wouldn't be able to find her. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief and fell into the darkness. John arrived home and went straight to bed. He was afraid he would dream about Sarah. But strangely enough, his rest was dreamless. When he got up in the afternoon, he walked through the rooms and realized that he had done everything right. Now he just needed to sell this apartment to erase all memories of his wife and move to another place. And he needs to do it as soon as possible. He's going to start his life over. Digging through his address book, he dialed the number of a realtor he knew, but he didn't answer. John called him a little later, and when he finally picked up the phone, he said he was in another city and couldn't help. What's the big deal? There are plenty of realtors now and a whole bunch of agencies too. Apply and you will immediately help. Well, I'd like to turn to a reliable person, John objected. You know what time we live in, and I don't want to lose my apartment. All right, I'll give you one number, said the realtor. Call me and tell me it's from me. Why are you urgently decided to sell the apartment? Are you leaving or what? We don't like it. We want to change our apartment and our life, even so boldly. But the boss is the boss. So I'll send you the number. Call and they'll help you. After he got the number, he called and made an appointment. My name is Andrew. Only I want to warn you right away that I will not be the one to deal with you. My assistant will do that, but I hope it doesn't matter to you. Am I right? Yes, as long as it's reliable. Then I'll have a guy come to see you tomorrow. His name is Stan. He'll take a look at your apartment, the neighborhood you live in, and get it to me. We'll get the deal done as soon as possible, and you'll get your money. I hope you know our rates. You've been warned? Yes, I was told, so I'll pay you as soon as you sell my apartment, and I get the money. Great, then everything's fine. The next day, John called Michael to warn him that he had some urgent business to attend to, and that he would be a little late, or maybe not even work today. But his phone was disconnected, so he called his deputy Paul, and told him that he would probably be out today, and if he could get off early, he would definitely come to work. Why can't I get in touch with Michael? Where is he? On a business trip. He won't be in for a few days. Oh, I see. He hasn't said anything to me, though. Do you think he should be reporting to you? John said nothing and immediately disconnected. Then he looked angrily at the phone he held in his hand. He and Paul disliked each other immediately. John thought he should be Michael's right-hand man. They were friends, after all. Paul apparently thought John had no business being there, so he hardly ever spoke to him. Sarah opened her eyes, not realizing where she was. She felt very warm. She looked around and realized she was in a hut. The walls were wooden. Lace curtains hung from the windows and bundles of dried herbs hung in the corners of the room. She inhaled the aroma. It smelled very good and unusual. And then she felt very hungry. "Is there anyone here?" She called out. "Sarah, my darling, at last. I've been so worried about you, Emily. How glad I am to see you. I'm so happy to see you." And then Sarah remembered. She looked at Emily in horror, then looked around again and cried. "He threw me out. He just threw me out like a useless thing, like a dog that its master doesn't want. But if it weren't for you, I'd be dead, I'd be gone. But he's my husband. How could he do this to me? Emily, how could he do this to a living person? How could he?" Sarah was really hysterical. She couldn't calm down, crying until Emily brought her some potion and made her drink it. After that, Sarah began to calm down, and then she fell asleep. Looking at this girl, Emily didn't know what to do next. That after what she had been through, it would be very hard to get her back to normal. Most likely she would just shut herself in and not want anything more. I mean, everything she did was for her husband. She worked so hard for him. Her goal was to get back on her feet so they could have a proper family. And John did this to her. And if she hadn't suspected, if she hadn't followed him, then what would have happened? Sarah would have died. Plus, he'd left her in a place where there were hardly any people, and no one would probably have found her. God, that's just awful. Something has to be done about John. He's just a danger to society. She walked to the kitchen and began to go further through the herbs she had pulled out of an old trunk. This was where her grandmother had once lived in Miami. After her death, Emily hadn't sold the house, and sometimes came here herself to get some rest and recuperation. Sometimes, seeing that this or that herb was running out, and she collected them herself, dried them, realizing that it could do some good. Many people these days don't believe in their healing properties. But Emily knew for a fact that they helped, and now she gave Sarah an infusion to calm her down and get some sleep. And then, when she woke up, she'd have to have a serious talk with her. And Emily already knew what she would tell her. John was walking around the rooms with a young man who was writing something down in a notebook. "Well, that makes sense to me. You're home all the time, I take it?" "No, I work. I had to take today off to meet you." "Then we have a problem. I need you to be home, because I can bring a client to you at any time who wants to buy your apartment." "Well, you make an appointment for tonight when I'm sure I'll be home." "You don't understand, a client can't wait. Besides, you're not alone. If you're not here, we'll go look at other options. You understand that? And from what I understand, it's in your interest to sell it as soon as possible." "Well, then what do we do? I can't stay home all day. I have to work, you understand." "Well, we have to work too. Besides, you're the one who said you wanted to sell the apartment as soon as possible. So what's the matter?" "All right, well, I'll give you another key. But I'm asking you very nicely. I understand. But we've been in business a long time and we do everything for our clients. So don't worry, everything will be fine. As soon as they want to buy your apartment, we will contact you immediately. And then you'll have to come right away." "I see, of course. So here, take the keys. Keep me informed." The guy said goodbye and left. John looked at his watch and decided that he wouldn't go out today. He would rest at home for a while and then ask Dinah out. Of course, he could ask her home, but for some reason he didn't want to do that. It seemed to him that Sarah's odor was still lingering in the place, and it was unpleasant. He picked up the phone and dialed Dinah's number. As he listened to the dial tone, he wondered where he could invite her so that she would like it. The ringing stopped and John dialed the number again. But there was still no answer. Then he decided to call a little later. Maybe Dinah would see that he had called her and call back herself. He went into the kitchen for a little refreshment. It felt light and good. For the first time in all this time, he tried not to think about Sarah, because he thought he had done the right thing. Sarah opened her eyes and saw the wooden walls again. There was a warmth and a sense of peace coming from them. She sighed and called out to Emily. "Are you awake yet? Why don't you eat? You need to eat something to give you strength. We have to keep going to class, and you've gotten weak." "I don't need class. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. And I'm not going to eat." "But Sarah, you can't do this. You'll ruin yourself." "So be it. I have nothing to live for anymore, so don't try. And you can throw me out too, so you don't have to deal with me anymore." Sarah thought Emily was going to leave, but she sat down next to Sarah, took her hand, and began to talk. "I know how you feel. I've been through it myself. After all, I was once in love too, and I thought I had married the man I loved then. I dreamed that we would have a beautiful family, children, and we would live happily ever after. But then I got sick. I was diagnosed with cancer. And then the difficulties began. At first, my husband braced himself, was by my side, supported me as much as he could. But he didn't last long. When I was at home after chemotherapy, he started to bring women into the house and make love to them. He didn't care that I could hear everything. He felt that if I wasn't living, I had no right to stop him from living. In some ways I agreed with him, but what I felt is beyond words. And then I heard him telling his girlfriend that he doesn't want to see me anymore, and that he doesn't know what to do, because the apartments are common, and if he decides to divorce me, then of course half of the apartment is mine by law. And then she advised to get rid of me. They started whispering, and I didn't understand what they were up to. But I didn't wait. I packed my things and left. You can't imagine what happened to me at that moment. I was alone, without a place to live, without anything, and I couldn't even go to the police because I had no proof. So I settled here. My grandmother was still alive at the time. She put me back on my feet and told me that life goes on, that she had sent me a trial and I had overcome it, so I could go on with my life just fine. I recovered, filed for divorce, and we split the apartment. My husband, of course, tried to get it all back, but I didn't want it. After hearing that, I wanted to stay as far away from that man as possible. So this is what I mean. If you once ran into a scoundrel, do not because of this ruin your life. You'll only do him good, prove by your behavior that he has allowed everything. You don't want people like that getting away with it. So please, pull yourself together, be stronger, and prove to your husband that you are a survivor and that you will be happy without him." Sarah listened intently to Emily's story and cried. Sarah realized that she was right and that she should not give up. "I understand you and I won't be cranky anymore. Bring everything you have because I am very hungry," said Sarah. Emily smiled. Everything is behind her, and now Sarah will definitely get better. That girl is very strong in spirit. She didn't give up then, which means she won't give up now. John went to work, and the first thing he did was go to Michael's office. He was there, and when he saw his friend, he was surprised. "I didn't call you in to see me. Did something happen to you?" "No, I'm fine. You've just been away for a few days. So I came by to ask how you were doing and see if anything was wrong." "I'm fine." John noticed that Michael wasn't talking to him the way he used to, but rather coldly and rudely. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine too. How's Sarah doing?" "I was just on a business trip and I was talking to this doctor. And he told me that Sarah's case is not hopeless and that we can try to cure her." "Michael, why?" "It's not going to change anything. We've already accepted that there's nothing we can do, so we don't need to show her to a doctor." "Why are you being so resistant? If you can't do it yourself, then let me take Sarah to see him." "Michael, you're misunderstanding me. We've been to doctors, and they've all said it's useless. You don't understand. You think I don't want Sarah to get better, but I don't. On the contrary, I care about her. Can you imagine what would happen to her if she believed it again, and it was all for nothing?" Michael listened to John in silence and could barely contain himself from lashing out at him. John noticed it too, and was a little taken aback, not realizing what had caused his friend's reaction. "What's wrong with you? Are you angry about something?" "I'm only looking out for Sarah. All right, well, if that's what you want, I'll ask her today. And if she says she's okay with it, I'll see the doctor myself. So you're happy? Now get on with your business, because I don't have time. John looked at Michael and walked out the door. He didn't understand what was going on, why Michael was looking at him so strangely. But he was distracted from these thoughts by the bell. It was a neighbor calling. She said that there were some strangers in the apartment, and that she decided to call him first and then the police. Thank you, Emily. But you don't have to call anyone. I'm just selling the apartment. Apparently the realtor brought in some clients. Don't worry about it. What's wrong with that? You should have warned me. Besides, Sarah's alone in there. Why would she have people in the house? Emily, Sarah left us for now to stay with her mother. After we decided to sell the apartment, we realized it was better for her to stay there for a while. He said goodbye to his neighbor and headed happily to his office. He waited for the call, realizing that he would probably get a call soon, because the apartment was big and nice, so they would buy it quickly. But time passed, and still no call came. John wanted to call himself, and then he was distracted. And when he remembered that he wanted to make the call, it was too late. So he decided to put it off until tomorrow. And now he'd better ask Dinah out on a date, and then have dinner somewhere. Then they'd go somewhere and spend the evening together. But like yesterday, Dinah didn't answer him, and he realized that something was wrong. Before he left, he decided to stop by Michael's office to see where Dinah was and see if she had gone back to his friend. But he wasn't in his office, and Michael's car wasn't in the parking lot either. Sighing, John drove toward the house to park his car. He went up to his apartment, got his key, but couldn't open his door. He was very surprised and thought that he had probably mixed up his keys and was trying to open the door with the key from his office. But no, the key was from his apartment. Only for some reason he didn't open the door. Apparently the neighbor heard the commotion at the door, because she immediately came out and said, "So who sold it? Why are you trying to get into someone else's apartment? How did you sell it? I didn't get any calls, and the papers showed me that the apartment was already in someone else's possession. I checked, and everything was in order. They changed the locks right away, and then they went somewhere else and haven't been back yet. I thought it was them. Then I looked through the peephole and I saw you. And the fact that you sold the apartment with your stuff, I didn't sell it at all. Nobody told me, and no one gave me the money for the apartment. So you gave them the keys. Did you leave all the deeds to the apartment at home?" "Yeah, they were in a desk drawer somewhere. I don't even know where I thought I'd find them. Then somehow I forgot. You know what I mean? I always come in late, so I didn't have time for them. I wish you'd found them and taken them. Maybe this wouldn't have happened." "Are you going to run to the police?" the neighbor asked. "I'm going to call the realtor and demand the keys and the money. In general, I'll tell him to come here right away," John replied. "And anyway, how could they get the apartment without me?" "Oh, my dear, these crooks are capable of more than that now. They did it without you. Haven't you heard? It happens all the time. And here I thought you were a smart guy and wouldn't fall for it." John didn't know what to do. It was like a fate. In a flash, he just lost his apartment. He started calling the realtor he gave the keys to. Then he started calling a friend, but all the numbers were disconnected. So he got in his car and drove to the police station. John sat there for 3 hours while he wrote a statement, while he talked to the investigator. Anyway, when he got out of the station, it was very late. John got into the car and realized that he simply had nowhere to go. While the investigation was going on, he had to live somewhere. He didn't want to spend money on a hotel. So he decided to call Michael and ask him to fly down for a while. He had already dialed his friend's number when he suddenly remembered about Sarah. Michael would not believe that he took her to her mother. That meant he couldn't know anything about what had happened. And after all, he was going to ask him for help, knowing that Michael had police connections. It's a good thing he remembered about Sarah. How would he explain the whole situation to Michael then? John broke out in a cold sweat after that. He started the car and drove to the hotel. Sarah had been staying with Emily for a week. She was happy and relaxed. But at night she dreamed about John, and how he'd throw her out of the car and drive away. And she'd wake up crying. Emily would come running to her, give her some kind of potion, and Sarah would go back to sleep. One morning after the next class, Sarah was lying on her bed reading a book when suddenly she heard Emily talking on the phone. You don't worry, she's fine. You're coming over, but on a business trip. All right then, we'll wait. I think she'll be happy to see you. Then you'll explain everything yourself. Sarah was curious who Emily was talking to, and she realized it was about her. But she wasn't expecting anyone, and probably no one remembered her anymore. After all, when she married John, she still had friends around. But then, when it happened to her, it had all gone away, and even Michael had stopped coming over. John said he had a girlfriend. Sarah felt uncomfortable hearing that, though she couldn't really explain why. She was married, she loved her husband, and she didn't care about Michael. Emily, who were you talking to? Sarah shouted, because curiosity had gotten the better of her. It's just someone I know. He'll be here soon, and then you can talk to him yourself. It's Andrew. Emily laughed, but didn't say anything. Michael arrived at work and went straight to his office. In the hallway, he came face to face with John. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his face was wrinkled, and it was obvious that something had happened to him. What's the matter with you? You don't look like yourself. Is it Sarah? Michael asked. Why do you keep asking about her? What could possibly be wrong with her? She's just lying there. She can't do anything else. Don't you want to ask what happened to me? Maybe I'm the one with the problem, not your Sarah. Michael looked at John in surprise, then invited him into his office. Well, tell me what's wrong. As long as you say Sarah's okay, Michael said. John opened his mouth, but then he realized that Michael would start asking questions, which would lead to a conversation about Sarah, and he didn't want that. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. You know, I know what you mean. And I was thinking maybe you should take a vacation. I'd send you and Olia to the sea, abroad. Imagine, it's winter here, and you're swimming in the sea. Well, do you like such an offer? No, I don't need it yet. Probably a little later. It's cold now. Sarah's not feeling well all the time. She must be moping. You know how she hates winter. You're not confusing things, are you? As far as I knew, Sarah loved this time of year, Michael said, surprised. Not anymore, John answered. Things are different now. You know how sick people become very unhealthy. Sarah is no exception. Sometimes she can be unbearable. Then I can only sympathize. But have you thought about the doctor I recommended? Has Sarah agreed? There's no time yet, but I'm telling her. Don't worry. Okay, we'll wait. In the meantime, if you need a vacation, you can go home and rest. Not from my face. I'd rather work. It's better for me. See for yourself. Well, go on then. I've got a lot to do. Sarah was looking forward to Andrew. Emily said they were having guests over tonight. She was looking forward to the meeting so she could brag about her progress. It was like she had a second wind after what had happened. Or maybe it was the herbs Emily had given her. Finally, a car pulled up in front of the house. The door slammed and someone entered the house. Sarah craned her neck to see who it was. And when a man entered the room, she shrieked and turned pale. Michael. She was scared. She thought since Michael had come here, he must have John with him. She didn't want to see him. For some reason, she felt very creepy. Images flashed through her mind, one scarier than the next. Emily, I think Sarah's sick. We have to do something. Emily ran over to Sarah and patted her cheeks. What's wrong with you? Sarah, don't be scared. Michael came alone. And you don't have to worry, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have found you. Michael, what does he have to do with this? You're the one who saved me and no one else. I called him when your husband fired me and told me he was taking you to your mom's. I called Michael right away. How do you know him? Well, he's the one who got me the job. Only he made sure that John didn't find out about it. Because your husband was always jealous of Michael and would probably refuse his help. So I called, and Michael sent his chauffeured car. We started watching your house. By late afternoon, Michael let his driver go, and it was just the two of us. And then we did. But we got a little carried away on the way, and we lost sight of you. I thought we'd never find you. But we didn't, and we found you in time. While Emily was telling Sarah all this, she looked at Michael. Her eyes were starting to smile. Michael had always been a true friend. He was always willing to come to the rescue. When Emily stopped talking, Sarah reached out her hand to Michael and said, Sit next to me. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Yeah, you're right. I feel like it's been forever. Sarah didn't realize the time had passed. She talked and couldn't get enough of it. She'd forgotten that you could just talk about anything and see that you were being listened to with great interest. I'm very glad I saw you, Sarah. And I want to tell you this. I found a doctor who has treated cases like yours before. Would you be willing for me to take you to him? Of course, I'd be delighted, she answered. I've always said. Sarah choked and stopped talking. Then she pulled herself together and finished her sentence. I've always told John that if you have one chance, you should take it. John, meanwhile, had no idea what to do. He lost his apartment. Then his car broke down and he had to take it to a repair shop. Money was running out like water. In addition, Michael disappeared somewhere, and his deputy Paul did not want to give him any money and said that he had to wait for his salary, because Michael had not given him any orders in this regard. There was nowhere to live, and the last 2 days he slept at work. The police did nothing. When he called them and asked if they had any results, they said that they hadn't yet, but they were doing their best. You're not doing a very good job, John said. You realize that I am left without an apartment, without documents, and you are not even scratching there. But you yourself gave the keys to a complete stranger. You didn't take any receipts or copies of documents. Besides, we don't know if there were any deeds to the apartment. Who can prove they were yours? Where's your wife? Why don't you bring her in? We realize she's sick, but then let us come and ask her ourselves. We'll hear what she has to say. John realized he was beginning to dislike this conversation. He referred to the fact that his wife was not here right now, and that when he brought her back, he would be sure to let them know. After he finished talking, he felt truly scared for the first time. What would he do now if they wanted to meet Sarah again? And he would tell them that she was still at her mother's house. Wouldn't they want to go there themselves? What's he going to do? What would he do when they found out she wasn't even there? He clutched his head, not knowing what to do. Fear was creeping in deeper and deeper with its insistent tentacles. He regretted having started all this. He should have accepted it and not gone to the police. It was his own fault, and he thought he'd get help. I should just take out a loan and buy myself at least a one-room apartment, and that would be the end of it, he thought. But it is unlikely to give him a loan, because the bank is bound to find out that he has a sick wife. Then it would be better to ask Michael for money. But he had not been at work for a week already, and John did not understand where his friend had gone. Time went by and still no Michael. Payday came, but there was some kind of delay and John didn't know what to do. He tried to call his friends to borrow some money, but they complained that they had a lot of problems now, and the time was difficult, and that they could not help him. John didn't know what to do. He had nowhere to live, and he probably wouldn't even have lunch or dinner today. He felt homesick. He sat down in his chair and wondered what had gone wrong and when. What had happened? Why had everything fallen apart for him? Everything collapsed like a house of cards. That's right. It all started when I got rid of Sarah, he pondered. It was all because of her. She ruined my life when she was alive, and she's ruining it now that she's dead. John had no doubt that she was no longer alive. There was no pity for her, only anger rising, because she was the one who had made things worse for him from the beginning. The next day he saw Michael's car parked outside the parking lot. He immediately ran to his office. Michael was sitting in a chair, rested, tanned, and talking to someone affectionately on the phone. "Hi, can I see you?" John asked, looking at Michael questioningly. He nodded and looked at his friend after saying goodbye to someone. "Did you want something?" "You're still asking? You disappeared for almost a month, and now you're asking me what I wanted. First of all, I don't have any money, and I still haven't been paid. I'd like to borrow some from you. It's urgent. How much do you need?" John named a number, and Michael looked at him in surprise and asked, "And let me ask you, for what purpose are you asking so much?" "I found a doctor. They say he's a doctor from God. He promised to get her back on her feet. So I need this money. So you'll help me?" "No." John thought he'd misheard, because he was sure Michael wouldn't say no. "I don't get it. This is all about Sarah. I need to get her back on her feet, and you're turning me down." "I'm sorry, man, but I can't help you right now because I have a wedding to get ready for." "What wedding? Who's getting married?" "I'm getting married. I met the one person I love more than life. So I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood for you right now. But you must have misunderstood. It's for Sarah. You're the one who told me you wanted her to get back on her feet. But you're her husband, not me. I remember I offered you my help, but you and Sarah turned me down. So what do you want from me now? Besides, I've already told you I've got some expenses ahead of me. I can't lend you any money yet. But Michael, I have no one else to turn to. And I already promised her. She's waiting. Can you imagine what would happen if I told her I'd failed? Michael looked at John thoughtfully, then said, "Okay, but you're going to have to wait a little while. I have to leave again today, but I won't be gone long. I'll be back later, and I'll introduce you to my future wife. But we'll settle the money issue too." "Wait, okay, I'll do it. But tell them I got my paycheck. Something's not going well there, and I have a family to feed. You know what I mean? There's medicine, and I'm broke." "All right, they'll give you your paycheck. Go to the accounting department. Tell them I told them to give it to you." John nodded and left the office. At least he would have something to eat today. Then his thoughts drifted back to his colleague. I wonder who he's going to marry. If it's a girl like Dinah, he's a lucky man. When he thought of Dinah, John frowned. After all, he had never seen her again after that meeting and had never been able to call her. Then she must have changed her number, because after he'd called her, her phone had been permanently disconnected. Apparently she didn't like him, and he was dreaming, thinking they'd be together. But that's okay. He'll find a girl tonight because he's got money. And soon Michael will give him the right amount of money, and he will buy an apartment and forget about everything like a terrible dream. Start a new life. Sarah looked out the window and at her watch. Emily saw this and smiled. She was happy for Sarah. She had blossomed lately. She had become so beautiful that it was impossible to take one's eyes off her. Love was good for everyone. And Michael was different, not as sullen as he had been before. She was happy for them, for they were the most beautiful couple. "He's here, he's here," Sarah shouted, and Emily came rushing into the room. "Sarah, careful. It's too early for you to make any sudden moves. You remember that the doctor told you not to?" "Yes, I remember," Sarah said quietly, impatient. "He fixed the hem of your skirt. It's just that you shouted so loudly that I was afraid you were going to jump up and run towards your lover." Sarah blushed. Emily smiled affectionately. The door opened, and Michael entered the room. He met Sarah's gaze and smiled with relief. "I can't leave you alone for too long. Even though I realize that Emily is with you, I'm still worried about you all the time." Sarah smiled and looked at Michael with a look that made him forget how to breathe. "I missed you too. I couldn't wait for you to finally get here. Well, here I am. I really should be getting back. You know I can't leave work for that long. I'll come with you. Besides, the doctor released me, and he talked to Emily and explained everything to her. And we're going to be homeschooling her now." "Oh, that's great. I moved your stuff into my house. I hope you don't mind. And by the way, Emily, you'll have your own room there too. Will you be living with us?" "It's out of the question," the woman smiled, and Sarah put her arms around Michael and snuggled up to him. "Honey, I need to talk to you. I'll tell you what I've come up with, but you tell me if you like my idea or not. Just tell me the truth." "I will. You know me. I'm a terrible liar. But one person that you and I both know very well does." And Sarah knew exactly who she was talking about. John was anxiously awaiting Michael's return. The money was melting away again, because staying in a hotel was very expensive for John, and he didn't want to live in cheap rooms. In the morning, he got to work as usual and went about his business. When he heard someone walking down the hallway saying that Michael was back, and they were saying that he was getting married soon, John smiled, got up and went to Michael's office. Knocked. He entered and saw him sitting at his desk, dealing with some papers. "You finally arrived. I'd given up on you." "Hello to you too. How's it going?" Michael asked. "I'm fine. Well, aside from the problems, Sarah's been giving me a hard time. She talks about this doctor all the time. Remember, you promised me money. Why don't we solve this problem?" "All right, let's solve it. So how much did you say you needed?" John gave me a number. "All right, fine. Sarah's not a stranger to me either. and I understand how difficult this is for both of you. I'll wire you the money now, but first I want you to meet my future wife." John heard the door open. He turned around and a smile froze on his lips. Sarah walked into the office with small, tentative steps. Emily's wheelchair was rolling behind her. Apparently, Sarah couldn't walk much yet, and then she would get into the wheelchair to rest. John couldn't take his eyes off Sarah. She had changed a lot, even more beautiful than she was before. And then she was on her feet. She was walking on her own, but how? Sarah was all John could manage to say. Then he turned to Michael, who was looking adoringly at his bride. "Yes, you're not mistaken. This is my future wife. She has filed for divorce, and you will be unilaterally divorced. Your word means nothing." "So, John, is there anything you want to tell me, like how you lost your apartment?" "Only it was my people, and it wasn't sold. They just changed the locks. Sarah still has the apartment. I'll give you some of the money. But I have one condition. You pack up and get out of this town for good." "I was going to turn you in to the police, but thanks Sarah. She talked me out of it. Said if you hadn't done that, she'd probably still be living with you and be crippled for life. It's like they say it was a blessing in disguise, but it was a blessing in disguise. But it was a blessing in disguise." "Yes, I understand," John nodded. He stood up and turned around at the door. Michael and Sarah looked at each other. They were happy. What would happen to him now? He didn't know at all.
Olivia felt like she was about to get lucky, after all the disappointments that had befallen her, after all the deceptions and betrayals. Patrick, who had so often taken advantage of her kindness and known no denial of intimacy, had abandoned her and run off with Aria. Felix, head of retail customer service for a large company, interned her under his desk for 2 months and didn't hire her. But now it seemed Olivia had gotten lucky after so much bad luck. She stood in the hallway of a huge mansion and could not believe the happiness that fell on her head. She would babysit the son of these rich men, and she wouldn't have to feel like a victim anymore, though Olivia let all her men into her heart without coercion. "This is your new home," she said with a warm smile. "Get settled in for now. If all goes well, you will spend a few days a week with us. William is growing up fast, and it's very hard for me to manage him." I'm still in shock," Olivia replied. "Do you have a map, or do I have to throw pebbles like Hansel and Gretel?" The hostess laughed. The house was really gigantic. 3 floors, a real spa center in the basement, a huge number of rooms, a garage for 5 cars. Olivia felt as if she'd pulled a lucky ticket. What had she seen in her life? In her home village, the two of them had lived in a small 3-room house. In Washington, D.C., she'd slept anywhere but cheap and close to her next job. And now, they were walking through a charming mansion whose design could easily win several awards at an international competition. There was a dining room, a movie room, a gymnasium. In the next second, Olivia was slightly disappointed. Ariana had shown her William's bedroom, and it was small compared to the other rooms. V was afraid to go to sleep alone. The landlady explained, "This is where we put the little couch for the nanny. We couldn't fit any more, but as soon as he falls asleep, you can go to your room. If you stay overnight, there's a nice little room waiting for you." She waved her hand as if apologizing. To make the woman feel good, Olivia lay down to show her that the crib fit her. Indeed, it was as if the nanny had been made for this bed. If Ariana had seen where Olivia had slept before, for the last 6 months she'd been renting the kitchen. Yes, she was allowed to put a yoga mat on the floor and sleep at night. For $100 a month. There was nothing cheaper anyway. And that trader Felix never once asked her to come to its house, even when his wife wasn't there, but she had studied his car inside and out. She knew every scratch on the dashboard, under the steering wheel. "Nice crib," Olivia said with a smile. "Where's our little prince?" "He's a boy with a temper," she said. "No one can stand him for long. I've decided to postpone the moment of your meeting. Now we'll have coffee and talk. We'll discuss the details, so to speak. I like to be in control. I'm sorry, but I'd like to know more about my son's nanny." "I'm an open book," the girl said. "Yes, and you look so young, so innocent," sighed the hostess. Olivia smiled slyly. Her appearance always misled men. A real angel with a little demon inside. Together they went to the guest kitchen on the 1st floor. The room was more like a cafe, but self-service. There was a lot of stuff in here. Coffee maker, coffee grinder, toaster, pancake maker, egg cooker, and many other appliances. Ariana pressed her finger carelessly, and the machine started making 2 cups of coffee at once. "Could I have some toast?" Olivia asked innocently. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. "Sure, make yourself comfortable," the hostess made a welcoming gesture. "If you get along with William, you'll eat here at lunchtime, and in the morning." "Oh, it's ringing. Sorry, I'll be right back." "Yes, go ahead." While Ariana was away, the nanny took care of things herself. She opened the first cupboard she could find and found maple syrup, real peanut butter, several kinds of bread. She quickly made toast and enjoyed eating it with the sweets. Then it was coffee tasting time. Guatemala, India, Ethiopia, Brazil. And Ariana was still gone. Finally, the woman returned. "Oh," said the hostess, turning on her cell phone to turn on the hood. "I see you've settled in." "Yes," Olivia answered innocently, putting the uneaten toast on her plate. "It's a little burnt. It's really nice here." "I'm sorry, it's just work," Ariana shrugged. "I get calls all the time. That's why I'm hiring a nanny. By the way, I forgot the cakes." The hostess opened the refrigerator, which the future nanny had initially mistaken for a futuristic-looking cupboard. Olivia wanted to smack her hand into her forehead. Instead of eating delicious desserts, she was choking on bread and pasta and syrup. Ariana seemed to have a taste for sweets. Staring at Olivia from the fridge was a classic tiramisu Italian dessert made of several layers of mascarpone cream and coffee-soaked sponge cakes. "What's there to like? The baby must fall in love with her, or she was lost. The girl can't go back to the dull and worthless life she had before." No more married men, traitors. As they walked to the second floor, Ariana talked about herself, that she loves her baby boy very much and doesn't want to share him with anyone. That she finds it hard to give the boy enough time, so she needs a nanny in the house. "I'm possessive," the landlady said. "William is all I have, and Mark, the 2 closest people in the world. I tried to do everything myself until the last minute, but work. Also, I hate playing with my son. I find all that fun so boring." "You don't like to play?" Olivia was surprised. "Oh, I adore children. I just want to play with them." She rolled her eyes dreamily. What could be better than playing with children? Her 4 younger siblings were always demanding attention. That was probably why Olivia hadn't learned anything in her 22 years. She never finished culinary school. That's because she hated cooking. "You have great references," Ariana said. "How did you make such a name for yourself at such a young age?" "It's not that young," said the nanny. "I'm 22 now." "Oh, you look 18, said the hostess. "That's a plus, but the references are still impressive." It was Olivia's turn to smile enigmatically. Victor did all those letters of recommendation. Not for nothing, of course. She had to thank him profusely. Her legs were shaking. But it was worth it. He not only made the letters, which are indistinguishable from the real ones, but also skillfully played former clients when he received a call from her new mistress. "Children are my passion," Olivia shrugged. "You can tell. Someday I'll have kids of my own." "I couldn't stand it and called everyone," Ariana continued, not listening to the girl. "After all, 5 letters of recommendation is a number, and you know all your former clients spoke highly of you. I was impressed." "Oh, you're embarrassing me." The girl waved her hand. She almost laughed, imagining Victor speaking in different voices. "This is the game room," the landlady announced. "Playroom is too weak a word. Rather a game gallery, a game space, a game express. Such a description would be more appropriate." The room took up a lot of space. There was everything for active games and creative activities. Soft carpets, balls, slides, labyrinths, swings, playgrounds. The girl's eyes were running wild. Everything was so bright and colorful. Olivia tried to find a word she wanted to call the place. Delicious. The slides, swings, rides, and toys immediately made her want to try them. There was an entire labyrinth in one part where Olivia could easily get lost. Completing the picture was a huge and sharp slide about 4 meters high. She'd only seen one of these at the play center before. She'd taken her little brother there when she'd brought him to show him around Washington. "Here come our boys," Ariana announced as she saw the door open. What happened in the next instant made Olivia's heart beat faster, and not just her heart, and not just beating. Mark was frankly bored. He'd grown bored with his luxurious palace. His wife's whole world revolved around William. And the boy, by the way, was growing up insolent and disobedient. Of course, it was Ariana's fault. She loved her son and always thought she owed him a favor. Every whim was fulfilled for some crazy money. When the kid was 3 years old, the wife suddenly wanted to show him the underwater inhabitants. And since there was no time to fly in her busy schedule, she ordered a dive on a small bathyscaphe right in the oceanarium. This whim cost a fortune. At 4 years old, Ariana had a bright idea in her head again. The kid loved flying in an aerotube, and his wife paid for the super expensive delivery and installation of this structure in their backyard. Sonny and his friends flew up and down for 2 whole days. The aerotube and electric bills were just cosmic, as if the kids had been to the stratosphere. "Hello, my love," Mark said in his most languid voice, took his wife's hand and kissed it, and imperceptibly wrinkled. He could not stand the black hairs that appeared on his wife's forearm. Again forgot to visit the beautician. "Here, meet Ariana," Ariana said, melting. "This is Olivia, our new nanny. God willing, it'll stick." Olivia stood there as if struck by thunder. Mark wasn't just good-looking, he was really handsome. He held himself and smiled like the Hollywood actor Orlando Bloom or a young Brad Pitt. She treated men like dresses. If she saw a beautiful one, she wanted to try it on. And this wasn't a dress, it was a couture suit. "I am the host of this hospitable house," modestly announced the handsome man. "I hope for fruitful cooperation." "What? A new victim?" There was a child's voice. "Well, I'll make short work of this one." William was holding a water pump action shotgun. He pulled the bolt and began methodically pouring water on Olivia. He must have splashed 2 liters of water on her. Ariana clutched at her heart. She liked this girl so much, would she really run away right now? But to her surprise, the nanny just laughing. "Oh yeah," she said, brushing her wet hair out of her face with her hand. "Looks like someone asked for it." She grabbed the 4-year-old tomboy, tossed him deftly onto her shoulder, and ran to the ball pool. She threw the boy into it with all her might. Ariana felt something like fear, and Mark felt surprise mixed with respect. But Olivia wasn't going to stop there. When William came to his senses and began to climb out of the pool, the nanny had already armed herself with the same gun and was methodically watering the boy. "It's not fair," he screamed. "I can't get out. Mom, do something." "Defend yourself, weakling," replied the nanny and continued to abuse the boy. But at that moment she got too close to the pool. William grabbed her leg and Olivia lost her balance, fell into the ball pool right beside her ward. Ariana stood at a loss. "Wow, what a game." "Olivia, are you okay?" she asked, running up to her nanny. "I'm fine," the girl replied, smiling. She was all wet from the water, and the boy pulled some glitter out of his pocket and threw it at Nanny. "Are you sure you're okay?" said Ariana. "I can call the doctor." "Dada, don't worry," waved Olivia's hand. "You can go now. William and I are going to play. See how stiff the kid is? He's probably embarrassed of you." "That's all right, we'll loosen him up." She deftly grabbed William by the shoulders, put her arms around him, and fell with him onto the balloons. She laughed again. The boy laughed too, though he had never been known to show affection for his nannies before. A real professional. Mark praised her. "Come on, darling, I'm starving." "So am I," replied the hostess. True, they were both talking about hunger of a different nature. As soon as they were out of the door of the playroom, Ariana immediately jumped on her husband and grabbed him by the neck. "At last we are alone," she said. "Have you remembered what day it is today?" "I remember," replied her husband evasively. "But it's in the middle of the day. I have a couple more hours to get ready." Ariana blushed. What was she doing wrong? Why had Mark grown so cold to her? She's still going to the gym, getting a massage, getting her nails done, and he's turning his nose up at her. Maybe he just got bored with her. Anyway, William was busy, and that's good. "Therese," the hostess announced to her cook, "make me some coffee and bring it to the dining room. And Mark wants lunch." "Bring it to my study where you've served my wife," the landlord said. "I want to see something." The woman was silent. She hardly ever opened her mouth, which made her an indispensable employee. While Ariana went to get the tablet, a cup of coffee, a pot of sugar, and a cottage cheese dessert appeared on the table, just the way she likes it. "Oh, Mark, what are you doing to me?" The woman, as soon as those thoughts entered her mind, tears started running down her cheeks. They could have had such a nice time, and instead she's sitting in the dining room, drinking coffee and flipping through a ribbon. So what had she forgotten? Right, William? She frantically opened the smart home app and started looking for the right room. God, how many rooms are there? So many cameras. Here, finally the game room. At that moment, the tablet froze for some reason and had to be restarted. Faster, faster. The picture came back. What she saw on the tablet screen shook her to the core. William was just an ordinary kid. Spoiled, abandoned, and even a little angry, but still just a boy who needed attention. Olivia figured no one had ever hugged him. During playtime, when she picked him up a couple times, he literally clung to her. They'd gotten along quickly, and in this room, she was willing to spend hours on end. At least for now. Wow, Skittles. Nanny splashed her hands. Let's play ball. Ball? William said excitedly. Come on. Together they set up Skittles and then knocked them down with the ball. Then they built a huge castle out of construction blocks. Then they shot each other with suction cup guns. There were so many toys here that there was enough for a whole kindergarten and more than one. William quickly tired of the active games and wanted a book to read to him. Olivia found a small library in one part of the playroom. At some point, while they sat on the benches and rested, Mark laid his head in her lap and fell asleep. Watching this idyll on her tablet, Olivia almost cried with delight. Had she really managed to find a permanent nanny for this 5-year-old tomboy? Of course, a few nuances bothered her. First, the girl had called herself and offered her services, and Ariana had paid a decent sum to a recruitment agency. Secondly, Olivia looked very attractive, but I don't think my son is thinking about a woman's beauty yet. Stupigra, the lady of the house shouted as she entered the room. William ran up to her. Mom, no, he said, I'll still play. I like it with Ariana. That's enough, son. That's enough, replied Ariana. Look at the clock. It's time for dinner. And Auntie needs to rest. Looking at the nanny, the hostess felt a little embarrassed. Her white hair was disheveled. There were traces of paint and felt-tip pens on her face and hands. All her clothes were wrinkled. I should have told her to get something to change into. And now? But what an effect. At that moment, Ariana felt a kind of jealousy and guilt in front of her son. Oh, what a baby, Olivia said. She sent this on purpose to dispel any doubts in her mistress's heart. I could play with him for hours. Well, Ariana exhaled. I'll hire you. We'll discuss all the details after dinner, okay? Okay, the new nanny waved her hand. I'd better get changed. She couldn't go back to Washington dressed like that. Well, she could, but it was her employer's fault. We didn't talk about that much action on the phone. Nor did it involve a giant room full of stuff. Leave it to me, Ariana heard her husband's voice. Apparently, he had also connected to the tablet and looked at what was going on in the game room. And he was obviously pleased with the result. Oh, exhaled the hostess. I thought you were busy. Oh well. I'll take our new employee to the store, Mark said with a smile. I think she deserves a new dress. What do you think? But Ariana didn't answer anything. She left the room with her son and went straight to the bathroom. She had to wash William's hands and then change him because he was sweating. Feed him. To talk, to ask him how his day was. With these thoughts, she didn't even hear her husband's words. She's disgusting, Mark said as the door closed. I don't know why I'm with her. We hired a cleaning lady once. She stole 3 packages of cheese and 2 bottles of alcohol. Oh, and some of Ariana's stuff. And what? Olivia asked, pretending to be interested. She wasn't really going to steal anything out of character. Called the police, said the man. I thought I was going to fall to the ground in shame. They even gave that poor cleaning lady some kind of fine. My God, for 3 packets of cheese. Imagine that. Yeah, said the girl, disconcerted by Mark's revelations. Oh boy. By the way, it was my idea to hire you on a permanent basis, the owner said with a smile. Ariana spends a hell of a lot of time on William. Or worse, she's dumping him on me. I've got so much to do. And I tell her we can afford a nanny. And such a pretty one, he added softly. The landlord looked her over from head to toe, and Olivia felt uncomfortable. He took a particularly long and piercing look at her breasts and thighs. She could literally feel his naughty fingers caressing her nipples, and not just her nipples. To distract herself, Olivia tried to imagine the millionaire's life. He must work hard to maintain and increase his wealth. Of course, wasting precious time on a child is unwise. I better wash up and change my clothes, the girl replied, fixing her hair. That didn't look good. Oh, of course, Mark said. Follow me. He showed her to the guest bathroom, and Olivia was surprised again at the number of rooms in the house. When she saw herself in the mirror, the nanny blushed to the top of her head. God, she was so dirty. And she was trying to flirt with that millionaire. Yes, she had to clean herself up. For about 10 minutes she scrubbed off the paint and felt tip marks, then tried to fix her hair. When she left the bathroom, she was surprised that this handsome man was ready to spend time with her again. In the meantime, he changed his clothes, and now his muscular torso was adorned with a shirt. It literally encased his muscles, looking sexy as hell. He followed her shameless gaze and smiled. "Want a ride?" he asked, playing with his muscles and car key fob. "There's a great store here, only 10 minutes away. We'll pick out something for your closet." "Of course I want to." Olivia was excited. She couldn't imagine how she was going to get out of here. She took a cab to the gates of the luxury village, hailed and paid for by Ariana. Then she had to walk a long way down the lane in search of the right house, accompanied by a guard. Burning with a strange sense of shame, Olivia went outside with the owner of the house. He showed her a large and beautiful car. The girl didn't know a thing about cars. "Here, a Porsche Cayenne," the millionaire announced. "We call it the Piston. You could say it's a middle-class car. But I like it, it's so big and comfortable. Get in." "And your wife?" said the nanny. "Your wife won't mind us driving around like this?" "No, not at all." Mark smiled. "You're part of our family now, aren't you? Right? I hope it will be for a long time." At this point, Ariana didn't mind in her thoughts. She flew far away. William was excitedly telling her about the new games he had learned while eating fish and chips. Mother did not hear him at all. There was a new object in her thoughts, which, "I'm sorry, baby," Ariana said. "It's ringing. It's work-related, literally 5 minutes." The woman ran out of the dining room and looked around. A call on the secret chat room on Telegram. No one must know. She picked up the phone. A shiver ran through her body. If Mark could hear what his wife was talking about on the phone, he would definitely be upset. Well, or surprised at least. The woman ran out of the dining room and looked around. A call to a secret chat room on Telegram. No one must know. She picked up the phone. A shiver ran through her body. If Mark could hear what his wife was saying on the phone, he'd be upset, or surprised at least. Olivia wanted to sit in the back, but Mark put her in the front seat. He chatted the whole short ride to the mall, talking about his daily routine. Nanny thought the man was lonely as hell to open up to the first woman he met. They'd only known each other for a few hours. "I have to make so many decisions every day," he said. "It's exhausting. Hell, sometimes I think, why do I have such a huge house? Why do I need all this? And I can't find the answer." "Isn't that happiness?" Olivia asked. "I feel like I'm in a fairy tale." "Oh, believe me, I'm like an Atlantean. I have to carry too much weight on my shoulders," Mark said. "It's so hard for me sometimes. I'm afraid that I won't be able to bear it and my legs will give out. I need support, oral support." "Maybe moral?" the girl said, embarrassed. "Maybe," agreed the millionaire. At the mall, it became clear to Olivia why he took a car for the middle class, not to stand out. Without leaving the salon, Mark put on a cap, black glasses, and even a mask, quite nice and neat. The nanny shrugged her shoulders and decided not to ask questions about the conspiracy, but the employer himself told her everything. "You see, we're so fond of getting mudslinging," he said as they walked down the corridor. "All these journalists, Telegram channels, I have to be invisible, you know? Be invisible." "Oh, cool store, let's go in." Olivia was out of breath. Mark pointed her toward Divis store, one of the most expensive stores she'd ever seen. It had a simple motto: only the best. She'd been in one of those stores once, and the prices on t-shirts and sweaters had made her dizzy. "No, thank you," she replied quickly. "It's too expensive." "Oh, it's nothing," replied the millionaire. "It's nice here, and do you know why? Almost no one comes in. After all, expensive things have their own charm. Now we will quickly choose a dress for you, and on the way back." A consultant in an impeccably white shirt and vest came in and gave Olivia an arrogant look. Her whole look said, "Go away, you don't belong here. There's a second-hand store right next door, over there." This X-ray immediately made the girl feel uncomfortable. Then the consultant in the snow-white shirt looked at Mark, looked at him for a long time, and smiled broadly. "Good evening," she said. "Are you choosing something, mister?" "No names?" Mark quickly stopped her. "I'm glad you recognized me, but pretend we're strangers. I need a dress for this lovely girl." What do you recommend?" The girl pretended to have a complex thought process going on in her head. The consultant slowly, as if reluctantly, walked around the room and collected 3 dresses. She walked with them to a door and disappeared inside. Olivia froze, surprised by these movements. "Why are you standing there?" the millionaire asked. "Come on, there's no time to waste. Time is money, you know." It turned out that the door led directly to the fitting room. The counselor left the dresses inside and came out. She gave Olivia another look of superiority, but the girl held her ground. The nanny looked at the lady and said, "Wait in the hall, I'll call for you." Olivia tried to give her voice as much independence and strength as possible, but her ligaments failed her and her words sounded like a request rather than an order. "That's all right," Nanny thought, "I'll get used to it yet." Just as she stepped inside and unbuttoned her blouse, the door opened again. "I told you I'd call," said the girl irritably. But no, it wasn't the counselor who disturbed the nanny's peace. It was Mark who unceremoniously entered the fitting room. The room, however, resembled a small restroom with a huge mirror and a sofa. The millionaire sat down on it, putting his foot behind his leg. The girl felt embarrassed. "Mr. Mark," Olivia said, embarrassed. "I'll put it on now, and I'll be sure to go out." "Let's not waste time," he said. "And listen, just call me Mark. Speak on the first name. Come on, put the dress on. I'm William's father. You're almost like a daughter to me, too." At that moment, something came over Olivia. She smiled at her employer and stripped down to her underwear, bending over charmingly. She was particularly pleased to see Mark's face flush, but he quickly pulled himself together. She began trying on dresses and admiring herself in the mirror. How beautiful she was, and slim, at least some plus from the constant lack of money. The main thing now is not to get fat on all these goodies of the hospitable house. "That's it," enthusiastically said the millionaire, clapping his hands. "Stay in it right now. You'll ride in it. Give me the tag. What if I have to return it?" the girl asked. "Nonsense." Mark waved his hand. "If you don't like it, we'll buy you a new one. A beautiful girl should have as many dresses as there are stars in the sky." Olivia felt awkward again. On the one hand, the dress was really beautiful. It was a neat beige color, very comfortable, fit like a slip. On the other hand, it showed her belly, and in the back, it was very tight around her hips. She twisted to look at the price tag, but the man was clutching the tag. He paid the consultant, receiving a portion of flattery for the excellent choice. It was obviously about the dress, not the girl. As she walked with Mark to the car, Olivia could feel the rapturous stares, how the men looked at her. And the women, too, with ill-concealed envy. And if they saw how handsome Mark was, they might die of jealousy for this gentleman. "Yes, life is getting better," definitely thought the girl and smiled. "Listen," said the millionaire as they drove back. "I don't know what got into me at the store." "What got into you?" Olivia asked innocently. "Well, I broke right into your dressing room," Mark said. "I made you undress in front of me. I don't usually do that." "It's okay," Nanny said, stroking his arm. "You said yourself that I'm part of the family now. Like a daughter." "Well, not exactly a daughter." The man stretched out. "Don't tell my wife, okay? Because she's jealous. She'll cause a scandal." "No way." Olivia waved her hand. "I'm a grave. I won't say anything. Don't even worry." "One time, do you know what she did? Hired some hottie to seduce me," said the millionaire. "She demanded a little more money and wouldn't tell me what she'd done. She said it would make sure your wife knew you weren't cheating on her. Can you believe that?" Mark kept talking nonstop. He talked so much that Olivia couldn't take his words in anymore, but they just flowed into one stream like a melody. She felt good. She was driving in an expensive car with a handsome man in a new dress. And then Mark suddenly took a wrong turn where they'd come from. Not the road, the woods all around. And what the new employer had said seemed logical, but still a little shocked the nanny. Ariana felt ashamed again. She hadn't had enough for long. Literally 20 minutes later, she felt herself boiling over. All her son did was throw a spoon on the floor. But one such gesture was enough to make her lose her temper. Fortunately, it was possible to put both William and the cook in the movie room to watch cartoons. He would behave normally while she quickly worked through her traumas with the psychologist. Yeah, she'd forgotten all about him. The doctor had to wait about 20 minutes. "Good evening," John smiled. "Are you feeling better?" "To be honest, no," replied the hostess. "I have anxiety." You know, I'm afraid I'm going to lose all this. And my little boy. That's what I'm most worried about. She circled the world around her, and the psychologist thought that such fears were quite understandable. How much does this splendor cost? What do they even make money on? Most likely in debt like silk. But the point of John's work was to make the client feel confident. The important thing was that these bigwigs paid their bills. I'm here to alleviate your anxiety, said the psychologist. We'll work through these fears and you'll feel better immediately. Oh, John, the woman sighed. When I talk to you, I do feel better. But then when you leave. Joan smiled again. That was the point of his profession. He's not a builder who goes into a house to lay tiles or nail baseboards to the wall once and for all. No, he's like a barber. And the more often the client seeks his services, the better. Especially if each fee is an amount that most competitors can only dream of. We'll work it out, the man said. You'll be empowered. You'll be able to control yourself alone. You just need a little time. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. You carry such a heavy burden on your charming shoulders. This house with all its wealth. I'm very worried, Ariana told her therapist. Mark and I have a sex schedule. Yes, I remember, nodded John with a smile. Once a week, on Saturdays. Said Ariana. If one of us can't or doesn't want to, that time is rescheduled for Tuesday. So, well, go ahead, said the psychologist. I'm all ears. This is so hard for me to admit, Ariana said. The phone. Again, her phone rang during the session. John could hardly restrain himself from exploding. These rich people are too much. According to the rules of therapy, the phone must be turned off during the session, no other way. Excuse me, Ariana said, covering the speaker with her hand. This is a very important conversation. Have some coffee. I'll be right back. The woman's peremptory tone was annoying. John smiled, nodded, and headed for the door. I'll be waiting for you in the guest kitchen, he said. Why not a refreshment at the expense of an uncultured customer? He billed her for the wait time as well, and she'd pay for it. Besides, Ariana's kitchen always had desserts that even John, with his fabulous fees, couldn't afford. And coffee? This family must have their own private plantations in several parts of the world. The flavor is amazing. Not in Italy, Austria, or Germany had he had such amazing coffee. Excuse me, Ariana said, appearing about 15 minutes later. It's all right, John smiled. If life sends you lemons, make lemonade. It's fine. Never apologize to me. And thought to himself, if fate sends you a rude customer, drink all this coffee and eat all the eclairs. It's like going to an expensive cafe and getting paid for it. So, said the hostess, Mark has been skipping our Saturday nights for a month now, and on Tuesdays, as if on purpose, he goes somewhere else. He owes me a week of sex. The psychologist coughed. Of course, he was used to his client's frankness, but sometimes she stumped him. Ariana, you've been married for so many years, John said. It's perfectly normal to take a little break from intimacy. No, you don't understand, the woman continued. Mark is a very committed man. He never fails. And here, he's always coming up with excuses not to fulfill his marital duty. Well, the psychologist shrugged. You need couples therapy. I suggested it, Ariana replied eagerly. But he refuses. He won't work with you. Let's not argue about it, John suggested. We need an intervention. We need to choose the money. Oh, a day to prepare properly. I'll arrange everything before he even realizes what's happened. One, and we're a threesome. Of course, it'll cost a little more. Ariana thought Mark's coldness was the result of her cheating. But how to tell the psychologist? She loves Apollo and her husband. Oh, and her son and her new nanny. She's got a big heart, and she could easily fit everyone in it. Even another lover could fit in there. No, a psychologist doesn't need to know about these nuances of her character. All right, she exhaled. Send me an email with a detailed intervention plan. Before we started, I want to know all the nuances. It was time for John to bow out. Gathering himself, he smiled into his mustache, pleased that he'd figured out this demanding woman so easily. She just has a fixation on order. He really, really needs her. Where else would he get so many rich clients? Maybe he'll even eventually afford a similar house, just a smaller copy. I'm with you, you hear? John said goodbye. Don't be afraid of anything and don't worry about anything. Together we will overcome all difficulties. By the way, let me thank you for slipping me the Fedorovs. Are they working with you now too? Ariane asked. Yes, The psychologist nodded. It was very timely. Another month and I don't know, we would have killed each other. Very interesting, said the woman. I can't say much more than that, John shrugged. Not even to a client like you. When the psychologist left, Ariana called Apollo again. She realized how much of a risk she was taking, but she couldn't wait to hear his voice. It must be necessary to end this relationship before the family falls apart. By the way, where did her beloved husband disappear to? Hello, Ariana whispered. No, honey, he doesn't suspect anything. Under other circumstances, Olivia would have been delighted at the romance that had descended upon her. They were standing in a picturesque clearing. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. The shadows were beautiful on the foliage. Except she was in the car with the husband of her new employer. And it seems this handsome man has plans for the new nanny. The most unseemly. For a while, they were just silent. Mark pressed a button and turned off the engine. Now I'd like to try you on, he told her in a tone that brooked no objection. But Mark, Olivia exhaled. It's the first day we've known each other. You're all handsome and expensive, but besides, what would happen if your wife? Forget the wife, the millionaire shouted. I'm the one hiring you, okay? Don't think anything bad. It's just that I saw you when I fell in love. Oh my God, this is fantastic. I've never had anything like this before. You're so beautiful, like a star. You should be on the runway with your figure. I haven't seen anyone prettier than you in a long time. Okay, the girl replied, looking at herself. Even though I don't think it's right. She glanced at Mark and was taken aback. In the second she wasn't looking at him, he had managed to unbutton his shirt and pants. He had a body so gorgeous that Olivia had goosebumps running down her spine. Like that super expensive dress from the big box boutique she couldn't afford, but if only to try it on. Her fingers seemed to run over Mark's torso, stroked his chest, explored the muscles of his abdomen. Then her palm slid down to his manhood and waited. Yeah, it was all right there too, just like in those adult movies. Get in the back, the millionaire ordered, pointing to the seats, and take off your dress or it'll get wrinkled. His tone made her a little uncomfortable. Who did he think he was? But the desire to feel like a millionaire's wife was too strong. What does she get out of living like that? A luxurious house, lots of money, a handsome man? This Ariana was too lucky. It's like she hit the jackpot in the lottery. It's time to share. The millionaire threw off his clothes and shoes and climbed into the backseat too. Mark, you're so cool, Olivia whispered, hugging the man. I'm aware of that, he replied, tugging her panties off and turning her back to him sharply. Then he laid down on the couch without even kissing her. He pounced on her like a wild animal, and the girl was amazed at his sexual appetite. He did it so sharply and aggressively, as if he wanted to hurt, but it turned out, on the contrary, to be very pleasurable. Olivia couldn't even think that in the depths of her soul lived a victim, giving herself to a man she barely knew, and to such a rude man at that. I am the master here. I'm the master, he said furiously, his pelvis reciprocating and pressing her face against the upholstery of the seat. Olivia's breathing became labored. Yes, you, she answered and turned her head to the side. Silence, he said, grabbed her hair and pulled her back into position, pressing her face back against the leather upholstery. He pressed into her harder and harder, as if he wanted to strangle her, and he took her harder and harder. Olivia found it hard to breathe again, and that was when she climaxed. They seemed to do it at the same time, because Mark exhaled and let her go. Oh God, he said, what has gotten into me? Nothing, it's okay, Olivia replied, stroking his arm. I wanted you too. I know, Mark said. Everyone wants me, I'm used to it. I'm talking about me, what I just experienced. It was stunning. It was like being on the moon. Shall we go before your wife misses you? The nanny asked, putting on her dress. I don't give a damn about my wife, replied the millionaire, but he started to dress too. Listen, it would be nice to have a snack. I'm starving. Can we stop somewhere? No, Olivia said. Let's hurry back to your house. She was scared now. She'd given in to temptation, and now she might lose everything. What if the landlady found out she'd slept with another man's husband on her first day on the job? How would she look her in the eye? She gave in to some strange temptation. She looked to her left and realized she had no regrets. The millionaire, charming as Orlando Bloom, was leisurely buttoning his shirt. you just don't tell her anything, he admonished the girl. Because she's so tender, vulnerable. You know, sometimes I want to do it right in front of her. Show her who's boss. You're the boss, Olivia said, to make the handsome man feel good. Of course, nodded Mark, pulling out onto the country road. But she always makes strange decisions and unilaterally. When we had our wedding anniversary, the round date ordered a grand 30 trailers. Can you believe it? Called all of our friends and acquaintances who were at the wedding. And she reenacted the entire ceremony. Every minute of it, you know. The first day, the second day. Olivia wasn't listening to her new lover. As they drove back to the luxurious mansion, she thought about how nice it would be to take Ariana's place. After all, it was obvious Mark didn't like her. He tolerated her out of respect for motherhood. And she, Olivia, could easily replace that upstart. She wouldn't do anything her new man wouldn't like, and she'll spend days with William. Mark, of course, has no time. He needs to pound capital, like a miner, mining dollars, euros, and pounds sterling. And this ungrateful lady. By the way, how will she look her in the eye after all that happened at the edge of the forest? Apollo allowed himself too much. Today, he called twice in one day. He liked the feeling of danger, the risk. What if Mark found out? She'd be ashamed if the truth came out. However, the mistress was comforting herself with the thought that it wasn't serious. A simple affair that would end sooner or later. She's just getting her fill of pleasure. Is that cheating? Apollo, I'd like to spend a little more time with you, but whispered Ariana into the phone. I've already thought of everything, the manly voice replied. He heard everything before the word but. Wait, my dear. Things will change soon. When I arrive today, don't be surprised. You will. Ariana was surprised. See you later. A few minutes passed and the woman heard the sound of wheels on gravel. They deliberately refused to have sidewalk tiles and asphalt in front of the house. Gravel was harder to maintain, but it looked better. Ariana came out to hug her husband, but there was a police car in front of the house. Good evening. A man in uniform greeted her. I'm sorry to come unannounced, but the situation is urgent. Oh my God, said Ariana. Is something wrong? Something with my husband? Suddenly, Apollo stepped out of the passenger seat. Apollo. He was dressed in his usual suit, which emphasized the relief of his well-trained body. If Mark looked like Orlando Bloom, Apollo looked like a classic athlete from James Bond movies, or Dwayne Johnson. But Paul was also very smart and calculating, not unlike professional athletes. It's an emergency call, the cop said, as if apologizing. And we can't ignore it. Let's go inside. Okay, Ariana agreed. She hated the police, but you can't say no to a man in uniform, can you? The rules of courtesy and hospitality required her to offer tea and cookies. But Ariana couldn't help herself. The policeman was stopped in the hallway. You see, the man began. Your private investigator has shown us the threatening letters that arrive in the corporate mail. And not just any letters. Oh, that. Ariana exhaled and waved her hand. It's nothing, it's nothing. Well, no, said Apollo in his sonorous voice. There have been 3 attempts to enter the restricted area in the last week. I came to the station for advice. Yes, the policeman interjected. Your detective acted professionally. I was the one who said I needed to talk to you urgently. He explained to me that you were taking these threats a little lightly. We went over all the information he provided. We've concluded that the threat is real. If you'd like, you can read the file. With these words, the uniformed man pulled out a thick folder with a pile of papers. Just looking at them made Ariana dizzy. I believe, said the lady of the house. We've been threatened before. It's not unusual. The door opened. A young nanny in a new dress appeared on the threshold, followed by Mark. The girl looked at the delegation in the hallway and went red. Ariana felt embarrassed. Too much upheaval for this young lady in one day. She must have been frightened. Mark, on the other hand, wasn't the least bit embarrassed, as he always was. He waved his hand, but did not approach his wife. Yes, darling, we were a little late, he excused himself. There were terrible traffic jams, but really, we shouldn't have called the cops. We should have sent a driver, Ariana interrupted him. I almost lost my mind. You've been gone over an hour. I can't send a driver to babysit our only son, Mark said in a high-pitched voice and looked at the policeman. Well, that settles it. We're sorry to have put you through a lot of unnecessary circling. We are ready to help as much as we can. Nobody called me. The policeman interrupted him. I've been telling your wife about the threat for the last hour. I can tell you again, sir. Mark's face became puzzled. Then he noticed the private detective his wife had hired a long time ago. He'd mistaken him for a policeman at first. The arrogant athlete in the jacket was smiling in a condescending way. Mark hated the big guy, but he had to keep his mouth shut. After all, a private detective might find out something about his life. "Excuse me, what's going on?" Mark asked. "It's a bad case," Apollo said. "Because of your new development. People are getting nervous. Maybe you shouldn't have been so active in the media." "Oh God, don't tell me how to deal with the press," Mark interrupted him. "We don't care what the plebs think, do we, darling?" He looked at his wife for support. Olivia wondered what was going on. What did the police have to do with this? She looked at her mistress and her husband and said, "I'm going to go. I think I should be on my way." "No, wait," Ariana asked her. "So, do we have to go into defense mode?" "I'm afraid so," exhaled the policeman. "We'd love to assign you a team, but the threats are so general, so unspecific." "I'm ready to be here day and night," Apollo blurted out. "I'm not leaving until I've identified all the threats." "Excellent," said Ariana. "I wouldn't want to keep people in uniform here. I'm sorry." "Well, let's go into defense mode for a week or two, until you can track down the stalker, right?" "Absolutely," the cop assured me. "I just want you to know that everything is secure. Let's not waste any time. Let's keep working." He turned and walked away. Apparently, the lawman felt uncomfortable in this expensive house. Olivia stared at her new mistress, her lover, and the big man in the fancy suit with wide open eyes. What was going on here? What kind of threats? What defense mode? "Come with me, darling," Ariana said. "I'll make you some green tea, it's soothing. And the men can socialize." Olivia excused herself for a minute to wash her hands and rushed into the guest bath. I wonder if she smells like Mark. Would his wife smell it? She couldn't risk it. She soaked her hands to the elbows then, her face and neck. She carefully examined herself in the mirror, and there seemed to be no traces of their intimacy. Lastly, she perfumed herself with some toilet water that was there. "Oh," Ariana said with delight, "that's a very respectable attitude to hygiene. But remember, the sanitizer is for things, not skin. The gel is for skin." "Merci," Olivia replied, blushing. We were at the store. "Listen, there are a lot of things you don't understand," the hostess started. "The thing is that my company and Mark, well, we launched a new project, and not everyone liked it. We don't have security, but I hired a detective. He says we're being threatened. I believe him." "What a nightmare," said Olivia. "Don't worry, my family has always had envious people." Ariana waved her hand. "We'll still do our job. It's just that, since this is the situation and you found common ground with my son, couldn't you stay here for the time being? 2 weeks to start with. You'll have to work weekends. We don't want you to go back and forth and have someone following you." "Stay with you?" the nanny said in a dry voice. "No weekends?" Ariana mistook her shock for doubt and began to persuade her. "I realize it's difficult, but don't be afraid," said the landlady. "I'll add your pay. The working day is 10 hours. The rest of the time you can watch movies, go to our Roman sauna, lounging on a chaise lounge. What do you say?" Olivia tried to calculate in her mind how much these bigwigs would pay her. It was a lot. And Mark's a great lover too. Free coffee, desserts, daily sex with a millionaire. It was like she was in heaven. "I'm in," Olivia said. "I just need someone to send for my things." "No problem," said Ariana. "Well, get settled in. We'll leave only you, Apollo, and our cook outside the perimeter." "Apollo?" The nanny was surprised. "Yes, that's the name of the private detective," the landlady explained and wanted to continue. But then her phone beeped. "It's ringing. I'll be right there." Olivia made the most serious face she could and nodded, and so began her double life. By day, she tutored William, spending hours on end with him. In the evening, she bathed and put him to bed. And at night, she went out with Mark. He'd set up dates for her in different rooms of the mansion. At night, the entire outer perimeter was closed, and only the millionaire family and the servants remained inside the house. No one else. Mark took her uncompromisingly and shamelessly. He'd done things to her that Olivia had only seen in adult movies before. But she loved it. To keep from going crazy because she couldn't share her secrets with anyone, the nanny imagined she was discussing her life with her best friend Georgia. She was far away, and she wouldn't discuss such intimate matters with her over the phone. You know, there's a special aura about these millionaires, she told her friend in her imagination. As soon as I see Mark, I agree to whatever he offers. So he asked you? Georgia wondered. Olivia fervently assured her imaginary interlocutor that nothing happened without her consent. But it wasn't true. Mark was just taking what he thought was his. It seemed that life locked up didn't weigh on him at all, especially as he traveled outside the perimeter, against the urging of a huge private investigator. Then one day the millionaire showed up at her room during the day. Olivia quickly realized why the boy was growing up such a— No, take a break, Ariana repeated insistently. I think William needs to spend some time with his mom. The nanny shrugged and headed for her room. Of course, she had been assigned a very small bedroom, but it was her own. She was delighted to have her own sofa and complete solitude. And you don't have to pay a dime for this beauty. More to the point, they were paying her extra. About 10 minutes after Olivia entered the room and settled down on the sofa, the door opened without knocking. The nanny thought Ariana had had enough. But no, the master of the house came in. I have a present for you, Mark said in a gentle voice, and handed her a box tied with a red bow. Wow, thought Olivia. It must be a new iPhone. She'd heard that millionaires usually gave their mistresses things like this. An expensive phone, wireless headphones, a fitness watch, something worth the money. The box did give away that there was a gadget inside. But what kind? Olivia shook it. Open it, Mark said. I want to see if you like my surprise. But the girl was not destined to see the contents. Suddenly the door to the room opened. At the last second, Olivia managed to hide the box behind a pillow. She crossed her arms so she couldn't see how much they were shaking. Spots appeared on her face. There you are, said Ariana. William is already tired of his mommy and is demanding his favorite nanny. I'm on my way, Olivia replied with a smile, though she wasn't amused. What are you doing here? Ariana asked in surprise, looking at Mark. I'm checking how our new employee is handling the baby, Mark said without a smile. I'll give her a little test at the first opportunity. We need to make sure William is in good hands. God, you're so thoughtful. Ariana smiled and kissed her husband on the cheek, then on the lips, then on his neck. Again and again, Olivia blushed. You're free to go, Mark said, as if mocking. While Ariana kissed her husband passionately, the nanny slipped out of the room. The box remained behind the pillow. Tonight, she would see what her new lover had given her. The gift Mark saw was a corner sticking out. He tried to correct it, but it turned out worse and caught his wife's attention. She quickly intercepted his hand. Oh, is this for me? Ariana asked enthusiastically, accepting the box. You're such a romantic. He hadn't given her a gift in a long time. On the one hand, it was understandable. All their wishes had been fulfilled a long time ago. What do you give a man who has everything? On the other hand, a little surprise is always so nice. She kissed her husband tenderly and then passionately. But when the woman opened the box, she was somewhat puzzled by its contents. Apollo quickly took his place in the luxurious house and began to be seen as part of the interior. He behaved on an equal footing with the owners, and it pissed Mark off. But he dared not argue with the big man. That was his character. In front of really strong and powerful people, he would pass over and try to make jokes. The detective, on the contrary, was extremely serious, and every day he made the situation worse. In the morning, he held some sort of meeting, drinking coffee with the owners of the house. Yesterday, I recorded an attempted break-in, the detective said, showing them a clipboard. Here you go. There was indeed some guy on the screen that was caught on camera. He was approaching their fence, hovering around it. On the next tape, the same intruder shows up at the driveway gate. There's no face, no specific features. Black cap, shapeless jacket, black sneakers, spun around and walked away. But he doesn't do anything, Mark said. He just walks around the fence, even if he tried to climb over. No, that guy didn't do anything. Of course he did, thought Apollo. I paid him to just come to the property, not to mess around. Not yet, the detective said aloud. I think there's a whole campaign against your family. We need to be on the lookout for any threats. Olivia, who was on her way to the master kitchen, froze in front of the door. If the baby was still asleep, she was allowed to drink coffee in Ariana's company. Hearing the detective's voice, she was discouraged. Who wants to break in here? Why? And why are these people talking so calmly about such scary topics? My recommendation is not to sleep in the same room, the detective said. That way there's less chance of, well, you know. We sleep in separate rooms, Mark said, embarrassed. Really? That doesn't concern you? Apollo kept a stony expression on his manly face, but at this moment it was hard for him to restrain himself. He knew perfectly well that Mark did not come to his wife at night, or rather, he should come once a week, but he shirked that duty. His conjugal duties were performed by Apollo himself, and quite successfully. At least Ariana was delighted. What I meant was that the rooms had to be changed, Apollo explained. One day in one, another day in another. So that, well, you know. I'll think about your suggestion, Mark said and looked at his smartwatch. Right, I've got things to do. If I were you, I wouldn't go around the city like this, unprotected, said the detective. You're not in my place, the owner cut him off. He quickly left the kitchen, and to the right of the entrance he saw his mistress, but he remained silent and only winked furtively at Olivia. Not in your shoes yet, thought Apollo, smiling furtively at Ariana. She looked embarrassed and hid her gaze. The video phone rang. The psychologist. Ariana said, slamming the desk, I forgot again. She ran out of the kitchen and saw the nanny, froze in front of her, raising her hand. Now, what to load the girl up with so she doesn't hang around doing nothing? Olivia, she said, go get William up already. You'll have breakfast with him. And then go on, brush his teeth, and then I'll join you for lunch, okay? The bell rang again. The landlady took out her tablet and pressed the button. Thank God for smart home, the front door opened remotely, applied to their mansion, a true smart palace. Ariana felt guilty once again. This time it was because she couldn't remember the times and dates when the psychologist was coming, and she had determined the days of the sessions herself. Good afternoon, she said as she ran into the front hall. John had already made his way to the stairs and was looking at the hostess with his traditional smile. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. It's nothing, the psychologist waved his hand. I understand perfectly well how busy you are. Well, shall we start our session in the kitchen? I'm so thirsty for coffee. I think you asked me to allocate this time just for you, to bribe you every time with your charming smile and desserts. Ariana was relieved the anxiety was gone. How wonderful that one can redeem oneself so easily. Buy the psychologist an exclusive coffee, gag her with a designer brownie, toss an extra banknote. Well, not toss it. Put it on a card. But in that moment, the guilt reappeared already in front of her son. After all, she hadn't even found time to go into his room and kiss him on the forehead to wake him up. There was Olivia for that now, though. We should give her some kind of gift to cheer her up. You know, Mark's been acting strange. Ariana began from afar as they sat down at the table. It's not that he's gone cold. Has he changed? The psychologist asked in an ingratiating voice, looking carefully into the eyes of her benefactress. She was the key provider of wealthy clients for his practice, so he needed to show maximum interest. Not that, Ariana shrugged. I wouldn't even say estranged. We've got a complicated situation here. As you can see, there's even security now. Oh, that's all the outer shell, John said. Let's focus on your family. What happened? What seemed strange to you? You see, doctor, he gave me a gift, said the woman and blushed thickly. Oh, I beg your pardon. It's the phone again. All these questions, all these cases, they get to her one day. Ariana whispered with her lips, quite silently, I'm sorry, and started discussing business matters. The psychologist didn't concentrate on the conversation. He was just hearing clever words from the world of high technology, which he didn't understand anything about. It's hard for me to talk now. Ariana was losing patience. In the evening we'll have a meetup, as always. Oh, okay, well. Tell me about conversion. Surprise me. John leaned back in his chair. After coffee he wanted to smoke, but tobacco was strictly forbidden in this house. Not even flavored vapor. And he loved smoking. He sees the process of letting the smoke pass through him as a kind of meditation. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. He's so engrossed in smoking non-existent tobacco that he misses Ariana finishing her conversation and returning to their session. That's the kind of gift he gave me, doctor, the woman announced. So what did he give her? Thought John. A task with an asterisk. But why? The girl was surprised. Why? To get money out of us, Mark shrugged. You should see the bills he's putting up. All right, enough talk, get undressed. I've just watched a movie. Now we'll try everything. I can't wait till tonight. No, that's not gonna work, Olivia said. No more risks. You realize if anyone sees us, it's a fiasco. Even if they do, Apollo thought, lurking outside the door. Even if they do. He took a few careful steps without making a sound. He turned around and went to the closet he'd adapted as his office. It seemed he had a real opportunity to take down his rival, and to do it nicely. Of course, Olivia wasn't going to put her new lover on a sexual diet, especially since she had an appetite too. She just decided to increase her value a little by stopping running to him at the first whistle. Let him have his way. Let him decide who is dearer to him than his wife or the new nanny who treats his son so masterfully. On the third day, the girl gave up. She wrote to Mark that she was ready to meet him at night. He immediately chose the location, Roman Hall. It was a huge bathroom in the basement. The girl struggled to find the right staircase in the dark, and then the right door. In addition to the huge bathtub, there was a steam stall. It was decorated as if one really found oneself in ancient Rome. "Wow," she said, "what a marvel. I've been waiting for you, darling," Mark whispered in his charming voice, pulling the towel off his thighs. "I've been longing for your company and your body." The designer had even provided a small couch where one could rest after the steamy procedures. On it, the millionaire assigned his son's nanny. Once again, no hugs or kisses. "I'm in love," he whispered, laying her face down and pressing her down hard. "I swear to God, I've fallen in love." But the girl couldn't relax. Tonight, everything was different and not the same. Mark's aggressive caresses weren't relaxing her, but tensing her up. Couldn't he be at least a little gentle? And Olivia couldn't relax either, because of the millionaire's constant whispering. "I'm in charge," he whispered, moving his pelvis vigorously. "I'm the boss. Aya." That night, the nanny was never able to turn off her brain to reach the highest point of pleasure, but she put it down to fatigue. William was pulling a lot of energy out of her too, and she had no days off at all. After the quick sex, Mark wanted to sit and talk some more, but Olivia hurried to say goodbye. "Honey, I have to get up early tomorrow," she said. "And anyway, if you want to make you and me feel a little better, I'd like to have sex away from your wife." Let her take the hint however she wants, or she needs to go on vacation with him. By the way, William can come too, or he should kick his wife out. Well, isn't it time to do the honors? Olivia went back to her room and fell asleep until her alarm clock. Mark, on the other hand, couldn't sleep a wink. After having sex with his son's nanny, he felt energized as if he was already rested. He needed to build on his success. After all, how good he was for hiring this beauty. Now there was always an appetizing dish at home. No need to go to special places where they serve them. He had a great idea. At 8 in the morning, Mark sat in the kitchen and sent out the invitations. When his wife walked in, she looked like she was the one who had been up half the night. He smiled at her and hurried to announce. "Good morning," said Mark. "In exactly 1 month's time, I'll be 37. I've decided to get everyone together for the occasion. Everyone. Here, I'm making invites." "But dear," said Ariana, "we need to discuss such matters with our guard. I'll get him." Mark's eyes widened. So that's it. The big guy's a guard now. Before you know it, he'll be sharing a bathroom with them, and he'll be the third one in bed. By the way, I should do my conjugal duty more often because I've got a big bill coming due. Not that Mark felt guilty about it, but he had to make up for lost time. So his wife wouldn't suspect a thing. "Paul," Ariana said as the detective entered the kitchen, "the husband wants to celebrate another birthday in style." "Uh-huh," nodded the landlord, sipping his coffee. "We've been a bit reclusive lately. We'll order good catering, invite musicians. By the way, you can be there too." "Well, there's plenty of time. I'll work out a program so no one gets bored." "I do not approve of such an event," said Apollo. "Really?" Mark was surprised. "I don't give a damn about your approval, big guy." "Darling, why are you doing this?" Ariana spluttered. "Paul works 24/7 as it is. He doesn't sleep at night. He's guarding us." "Sweetheart, what the hell?" Mark said. "We live in a gated community. Protected. You and I have been threatened our whole lives. I think the number of guests should be reduced," said Apollo, as if he hadn't heard the criticism. "Down to 10. I'll hire a couple of guys. We can provide security." Mark jumped up from his seat and left without even finishing his coffee. The detective was triumphant, but he didn't show it. "There we go." Ariana exhaled. "We need to work this situation out with a psychologist." "My lady," Apollo said, "I have some information to share." "I'm listening attentively," the woman replied and tried to smile. "I would like to warn you right away," the detective continued, "that some aspects may hurt. Are you sure you want to know that?" Ariana smiled at first. She was already prepared to listen to another story about the house being besieged at night by unknown intruders. But what Apollo told her really hurt. It really hurt, and it really hurt. "Listen, how long are you going to be with me?" William asked, stretching in his bed. "What do you mean?" Olivia wondered. "I think so. Maybe even forever." "No," the boy objected. "All babysitters leave quickly." "How many were there?" the girl asked. "I can't count," William shrugged. "What are we playing today?" Olivia was supposed to prepare a menu for her pupil from the evening. A woman named Teresa, who was known as the cook, prepared every dish with diligence. She had the undeniable advantage that she was always silent. At most she would say hello or ask how she was doing. When Nanny and William arrived in the dining room, everything was ready. Olivia removed the steel covers and there were 2 plates underneath. Nothing fancy: rice porridge, thin strips of bacon, a boiled egg, tomato, and cucumber. Waiting for the boy was a glass of orange juice that Teresa had prepared the day before. The girl smiled. How nice it was not to have to cook. She hated that activity. "I don't eat meat," William said with a pout. "You had some yesterday." Olivia was surprised, picking up her fork and knife. "I did," the boy admitted. "I haven't eaten since today." "Well, only if you feed me." For some reason, the boy liked to be served by someone, although his age required him to eat on his own. But Olivia didn't see anything wrong with that whim. After a few seconds, he took the dishes and began to eat as if nothing had happened. "Now I'm eating meat," William said. "It's good." "Bad boy," said the nanny, and the little boy smiled. He knew she didn't mean it. "Shall we go outside?" "Uncle Paul says it's dangerous out there," William said. "Nonsense," Olivia said. "It's nice out there. Look how the sun is shining." "I'm not going," the boy said. "We'll be in the playroom, okay?" With such a huge entertainment room, it was really possible to stay indoors. Right away, William decided to play basketball. He had a hoop, almost like a real hoop, but at a lower height, and a much lighter ball. Then he decided to shoot a toy gun, then to build a castle, then to put together puzzles. So the time to lunch passed. Ariana did not honor them with her presence. "Tired?" said the little boy and clung to Olivia. "William, will you miss me if I go away?" the nanny asked, squatting down and hugging the boy. "No," he admitted honestly, "I don't know how to be bored." Ariana never came to see them that day. Olivia walked around the mansion, but couldn't find her mistress anywhere. And Mark was missing too. For a moment it seemed to her that she was alone in this huge house with William and the cook. It was so, but she would not like the reason for her loneliness. Once again waking up alone, in an empty bed, Ariana realized that she could not wait any longer. She couldn't take it anymore. She needed to talk to her husband. This couldn't go on for too long. She wandered around the mansion, but her spouse was nowhere to be found. She had to call the phone. "Mark," Ariana said, "I'm waiting for you in the living room. Come here at once." Not 5 minutes later, he showed up. Where the hell had he been hiding? Putting his trademark smile on his face, Mark walked over to his wife and put his hand on her shoulder. It was hot, but Ariana shamelessly rejected the caress. In her hand, she was holding a document, an ordinary sheet of A4 paper folded in 3, and she was crying. "Mark," she said, "will you explain what this is?" He took the document in his hands, unfolded it, and felt the sweat on his forehead. He'd been caught in a camera trap. The picture showed Mark sitting with his torso unbuttoned behind the wheel of the very same Porsche Cayenne, with Olivia's hand on his chest. Yeah, he saw the sign. But did they really send them that photo? It was nothing. Mark waved his hand. "Just a small fine. I'll pay it." "Is that what you think I'm worried about?" his wife asked, wiping away a tear. "Honey, you're going to find this hard to believe," he began, trying to hug his wife. She slipped away again. "But you have to for both our sakes. Nothing happened with her, I swear to you." "Okay, how about this video?" Ariana asked, showing him the tablet. "It's him walking into the Roman room in his robe." What's the big deal? He resented it. So what if I decided to take a bath? I'm a free man. Then look further, said the wife, wiping away a tear. Following the man, looking around, walked in Olivia. You've been following me. Mark blurted out. We're a family, we're one. Is that why you're sleeping with the nanny? Ariane asked. You betrayed me. You betrayed me. It's a good thing Paul opened my eyes. Oh, that's why you hired him? Mark was puzzled. So he could spy on me? For the first time in their years together, they fought, and the man let out everything that had been building up in him for years. He casually mentioned a few names of his mistresses, and she knew it. He'd said so many hurtful words that Ariana felt insulted, humiliated, crushed. Why did you put up with it? She asked, wiping away her tears. Why did you keep silent? For you. Mark exhaled. We're family. I can't see you anymore, Ariana said. It's beyond me. Well, said the man, suddenly calm. It's your choice. If that's the way you want it. The next morning was strange. The cook woke Olivia up and asked her to come downstairs. When she asked about William, the woman just waved her hands. The boy is not allowed in, she said. Please go to the front room. They're waiting for you there. The nanny thought Mark had finally had an epiphany, that he appreciated all her concern for the child and was ready to prioritize, like kicking out his useless wife, who's always hanging on the wire and can't even play with his son. But the reality turned out to be much more painful than the girl had time to draw. Good morning, said the private detective. He was dressed in his impeccable suit and a white shirt that was tight around his muscles. Good morning, Olivia replied. What's wrong? You're leaving. I've been authorized to get you out of here, Apollo said, along with all your belongings. What? Nanny was outraged. How dare you? I'm not a servant. I'm a full member of the family. What do you think you're doing? The same as you. The detective smiled and lowered his voice. Only not with Mr., but with Mrs., but none of that matters anymore. We'll go up to your room now. You'll pack quickly, and we'll go away. So that's how it is, thought the girl, used and thrown away. Of course, when Mark was caught frying, he preferred to keep the family together. In the room, the nanny hesitated, tears beginning to roll from her eyes. That's how the story ends. She just gets kicked out. No more coffee and cakes, no more huge playroom, and the little millionaire. And no more perfect lover either. But Apollo was deaf to her misery. He extracted 2 large garbage bags from the inside pocket of his jacket. Here, he demanded, unfolding one, and began throwing all her things into it indiscriminately. Tears kept rolling down her cheeks. In just 5 minutes, both bags were full. He picked them up easily and carried them in front of him as if they were trash. Would you call me a cab? Olivia asked. I can't carry this stuff myself, and I have nowhere to go. Don't ask questions and don't talk, Apollo demanded. Follow me. He opened one of the cars that definitely belonged to her former employer's family. She didn't know the make, but the car looked very expensive. She had seen the family driver behind the wheel of this car before. Apollo put his hand to the trunk of the car, and it swung open. Threw her things in there. Ariana wants me to personally drive you away, he said. So get in. Olivia felt scared. This big guy could take her out into the woods and hit her over the head, or abuse her, or do something terrible. She wanted to run away, but where to? I'm not going, the girl said. You're scaring me. Don't be afraid. Apollo smiled and showed her a puffy envelope. He opened it. You've just been calculated and fired. Nothing personal. When she saw the bills, the fear went away. Just like that, she would leave undefeated. The girl smiled and jumped into the front seat. As they drove, Olivia tried to pique the jock's interest, as if unintentionally showing him her leg, pretending that she was very hot. And then the strap of her dress slipped down by accident. But Apollo paid no attention to her. He was going so fast it was breathtaking. A real racer. In half an hour they were in Washington, D.C., speeding through its streets. Where are we going? Olivia asked. I don't have anywhere. I moved out of my previous room. Ariana's generous, the detective said. She rented you a hotel room for 3 days, so you can look for a new place to live. Oh my God, that's so sweet, the girl said. I'm going to miss this castle. It was the best 3 weeks of my life. Well, said Apollo, stopping outside the inn. Take your things and get out. Show me your passport and that's it. Wait, Olivia grabbed his shoulder. Where's my money? Oh, yeah. The detective pulled an envelope from his inside pocket and began to count the bills unceremoniously. But Olivia was nimble. She snatched the money and immediately jumped out of the car. Apollo stood up slowly, walked around his vehicle, and hovered over her. What are you doing? He said irritably. I'm going to calculate you myself. Bring it back here. Look around, said the girl with a sly smile. We're in Washington, not your mansion. If you misbehave, I'll call the police. I'll tell them you've been harassing me, and it's all on camera. Apollo cursed and raised his hand to hit the stubborn blonde. But then he lowered his hand, thinking that now he wouldn't have any need for money. Okay, you win. He opened the trunk, tossed 2 bags on the ground, and set off. A month ago, Olivia probably would have fallen through the ground, but the 3 weeks she'd spent at the millionaire's mansion had given her mental strength. Walking behind the counter, she gave her information, received an electronic key, and nonchalantly pointed to the bags at the entrance. That's my stuff, Olivia said. Have someone drop it off. The room was not as comfortable as the hotel, but it was nice. When she counted the bills, she realized that she had enough for a couple of months of comfortable living. And then, suddenly the phone rang. The now former nanny was pleased to see 4 cherished letters on the screen. Darling, whispered Mark without greeting. Can you and I meet? Of course, Olivia replied. I'm waiting for an apology and moral compensation for the lost work. Everything will be fine, my dear, the man replied. I'll tell you things you won't believe. Apollo was over the moon. He had just pulled off the most successful operation of his life. He had cleared the way for wealth, happiness, and a secure old age. His enemies laughed at him in vain. Now he's beginning a new phase of his destiny. First of all, he must be careful not to let any rival appear. If he hires a security guard, it'll be a total imported man, or gay. Secondly, we need to keep Ariana safe and well taken care of. Get that psychologist away from her. Don't waste the family money on that kind of nonsense. Apollo's car pulled up to the village, but the guards were in no hurry to raise the barrier. Hey, guys, barked the detective. Let's roll down the window. Don't we recognize our superiors? I'm sorry, I was told not to let you in, answered the officer in charge. Your pass has been revoked. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Apollo, getting out of the car. He ran to the barrier and tried to lift the boom. Yes, it is made securely. Even his strength is not enough. You understand, it's not our decision, said the guard. And if you go on a rampage here, well, you know what will happen. You're confused, the detective said and pulled out his cell phone. He tried to reach Olivia, but the call wouldn't go through. She blocked him on Telegram and other messengers. So he got behind the wheel, pushed the button, but the engine wouldn't start. She blocked the electronic key too. Don't worry, we'll drive the car away, the guard said. You better call a cab. What do you think you're doing? Apollo shouted. He could not comprehend what was happening. Do you know who I am? All I know is that you are not on the list of people allowed into the restricted area, the man replied politely. We have the right to call the police to settle a dispute, but we wouldn't want it to come to that. Apollo spat, turned around and walked away. Had the rascal outplayed him? No, Ariana just needed to cool down. In a day or two, she'll be looking for him herself. She can't live without him. Mark entered the room of the budget hotel and looked around. It was poor, but that's how most people lived, at best, or maybe a lot worse. Olivia rushed over to him, smiled radiantly, and kissed him. Probably wants to go back to the mansion. I dumped her, Mark said. You know, I suspected from the beginning that my marriage was a mistake. You know, when I saw you? It was like a switch in my heart. I swear, I've never seen anything like it before or since. I'm so glad to hear that, Olivia said. I fell in love with you right away, too. I'd also thought it would be cool if I could take that. Ariana's place. Mark smiled. At that moment, he really did look like Orlando Bloom, like a sibling. He hugged her and kissed her. And the girl literally flew to the 7th heaven from happiness. Her dream had come true. What a dream, the most daring dream. Now the handsome boy belongs only to her. So first of all, no nannies. At most a nurse, old and ugly, so that the man will not even think of cheating. Secondly, you need to get yourself cleaned up. Get your hair done, go to the gym, go on a diet. You should only want her. Third, constant supervision. She's not gonna trust this dog like Ariana. No, he has to be there for her at all times. So you kicked her out, Olivia said with a smile. Oh, it's such a trauma for poor William. Better, said the handsome man. I left on my own. The girl couldn't believe her ears. Her jaw dropped and nearly fell on her chest. Was he going to build a new house? Yeah, if he'd left her a castle like that, let him go. What does she know about the man, though? Maybe he's got another house. Maybe even bigger and better. And not in the U.S., but somewhere on the coast of Spain. I don't want that golden cage anymore, Mark said in a high-pitched voice. Let her stay in that luxurious house of hers alone. Well, with our little son. I'll come and visit him once in a while. What? Olivia asked. So it's not your house? No, Mark smiled. It was her father who built it, but you love me, don't you? Of course, she replied, and felt her throat go dry. But artificial intelligence. I gave up my share of the family trust too, the man continued. You know, her father would have made me do it anyway. He wouldn't even take his car. Screw them, I want to forget this whole thing like a bad dream. I'm sorry, whispered the former nanny. I'm dizzy. We'll get an apartment, Mark continued, as if he hadn't heard her. I don't have much money, but I found a good one. It's called a studio. 12 square meters, just the essentials. We'll work together like a normal family. I think we'll be able to afford something bigger in time. But Olivia said, gulping for air. But I know you have a lot of stuff, the man sighed. I'll order storage systems. You know, there are those textile ones. You know, like upholstered closets. We can put some of it in the common hallway. Olivia, where are you going? But the former nanny wasn't listening to him anymore. She was moving on to a new life. Without Mark and the studio apartment. Let him stay in this room for 3 days. He needs it more.